Coming up, we've got Chris Kacvinsky from Bulletproof Action on, and we will be looking at American Ninja 2, Confrontation. So, absolute classic there. One that I've been meaning to do on the podcast for a long time. Also been meaning to do some more Dudikoff. And it's so absolutely perfect that Chris's first time on the podcast that we do this one. It was a really great conversation. And then next week, we finish out the month of May with Frankenhooker, with Fred Young from Full Moon Reviews. He's going to be on with us talking about Frankenhooker. So we actually had him on about 10 years ago in the earlier iteration of the podcast when Jamie and I were doing it together. And at that time, so his was one of the ones that when TalkShoe, which was the old hosting site, when they had their server meltdown, his was one of the episodes that we lost. It was a really great conversation we had about Reanimator, so I'm going to try to get that one up soon as well, so you can kind of get back in the archives and see some of those old posts as well. But that'll be next week. We'll have Freddie Young from Full Moon Reviews on next week talking about Frankenhooker. And then as we get into May, we'll have Todd Liebenow from Forgotten Filmcast. He'll be on. We'll be looking at Cracker Jack 2, so another classic that I've been meaning to get to for a long time. And that was another fun conversation there. And then Ty from Coepens is back from his weekly stint on the DTVC podcast. This time we're going to be looking at 2 from Michael Madsen, Assault on Hill 400 and Machine. So that should be good there. Then we've got the rest of May scheduled, so it's just a matter of getting those episodes recorded. So it should be another fun month for us here at the Direct-to-Video Connoisseur podcast. Then in terms of DTVC Extra, so I mentioned last week that I have to go to New York for work on Thursday. So I'm hoping, my plan is to maybe get that DTVC Extra episode recorded tomorrow, so on the day before on Wednesday, and maybe kind of do schedule the post to go up on Thursday night. We'll see if I can pull that off. I've never done it before, so it will kind of be one of those things we'll all kind of see how it goes. If not, we'll get it up on Friday. That'll be the goal there. But yeah, I've seen the movies, so I've watched them all now. I've kind of been gathering my thoughts. Had to take the subway for a couple trips and stuff like that yesterday, so kind of just go through all that stuff in my brain about how I want to discuss those movies. It should be really interesting, but it'll be like a sort of 3 segments as opposed to the usual 2, because we'll be looking at 3 movies. We'll be looking at Predators, The Predator, and Prey. So yeah, because again, you cannot use the numbers when you're talking about sequels. And it's interesting too, when I was reading about it, that I guess The Predator is like a midquel, is the term that they use, because it takes place between number 2 and number 3. I don't know. We'll get into it more. Stay tuned. Kind of watch this space here for the next DTVC Extra episode where I finish up my look at the Predator franchise, and then I think the next one after that is going to be John Wick. I think we're going to do John Wick. So 1, 2, and 3 are available on Peacock, and then number 4 I would have to rent. That's the only one I'd have to pay for. It's available through Stars, which I was thinking about doing like a kind of. I don't know if you remember on the blog when I did the Stars Play 11, where Netflix was getting rid of all the Stars movies, and there was 11 movies that I wanted to cover on, that were before Netflix got rid of them. So it was like the Star Play 11, where I just watched them all, got images of them, and then slowly started putting up the reviews. I've thought about maybe doing something similar, like maybe I do a 7-day free trial of Stars and just watch as much that's on there as possible, and then cancel the free trial. I don't know. It's probably easier just to rent John Wick 4. The other thing I'm still debating about is whether or not I'll do the Continental. That's the sort of the mini series that's on Peacock that is based on John Wick. I don't know, just because really the main idea is doing the Keanu Reeves movies. That's kind of the main focus, but we'll see how that works. But anyway, that's the plan for the next one. I mean, I'll say these Predator ones have been really well received. I think these and the Blood Fist ones have done the best so far, and so I want to kind of keep that momentum going with that and kind of do another franchise that's kind of in a similar vein that people really enjoy. Yeah, now in terms of the site, we just posted VFW. Oh, sorry. We just posted One Ranger, that Jesse V. Johnson film. And then VFW this weekend, that's the plan. So I finally watched that one on AMC+. So I just got to get the images and write that review. And then in 2 weeks, we will be doing, so for the first one in May, I guess is what that'll be, the first May post, we will be doing Three Kinds of Heat, Robert Ginty film that's available on Prime now, so we'll do that. Also, our indie review for the month of April is Galaxy Warriors. It's a film that it's directed by a guy named Brett Kelly, who I came across when I was doing the Marvel MCU movies. I was thinking about maybe as a tie-in on the site to do some DTV kind of rip-off comic book movies. And one of the spaces that Brett Kelly has carved for himself is doing like, I don't know, like pre-code or like, public domain comic book characters that may or may not have been the basis for some of the big ones we know. So like one of them I think is like the Black Bat or something like that. But I was just looking at him. He seemed like another schlock auteur that I could definitely get into. So I looked at what his most recent film was, and it was Galaxy Warriors. It is essentially, you'll see in the review, it's essentially what I called Impossible Burger version of exploitation, because it's exploitation without any of the exploitation in it, right? So a women in prison film, futuristic women in prison film, similar to Star Slammer, the Fred Olen Ray film, only with no nudity, no bondage kind of elements in it. I joked that they didn't even use go-go boots for the outfits. They used, gaiters. So really none of the stuff, no girl-on-girl action, none of the stuff that you expect from a women in prison exploitation film. And so I was joking, or I wasn't even necessarily joking. I was saying I think what they were going for is like exploitation without the exploitation, right? Essentially the Impossible Burger version of exploitation. So, you can kind of check out the review, kind of see how they did on that, what my thoughts were on it. But that's kind of the idea there. So look for that as our indie review for the month of April. Yeah, I think that is everything. Again, speaking of indie and April, it is Indie April. We're closing out the month here, but if you haven't yet, pick up one of my books. You've got Bainbridge, my short action novella that is available in Kindle and in paperback. Also, my most recent novel, Don's House in the Mountains, again, available Kindle and paperback. Definitely pick those up. Or if you want to just support the site, Threadless is always a great way to go there. There was a sale going on with like $15 t-shirts, which is always a good deal there. Again, weather's getting nice. I mean, here in Philly, it was cool over the weekend, but it's kind of fluctuating between nice and not so nice. But definitely you could use some t-shirts, and what's better than a DTV connoisseur t-shirt, right? You gotta especially one of our VHS designs that John Cross from After Movie Diner did. Those are always fun. All right, it is we're a little bit after 7 minutes here, so we might as well have John play our theme song in here, and then we will, when we come back, Chris from Bulletproof Action will be on, and we'll be looking at American Ninja 2. All right, we are back, and I am joined by a very special guest. We've got Chris Kacvinsky from Bulletproof Action. Welcome, Chris.
Well, thank you, Matthew, for having me. I've been a fan of your work for some time, and we've been able to connect on some special posts on bulletproofaction.com, and I'm glad I get to kind of repay the favor and be here on your show.
Yeah, I've been meaning to ask you for a bit, and I know because I've been listening to your podcast as well, and I was thinking.
So you're the one.
Right now, yeah. Well, yeah, great. So I haven't listened to your latest Roadhouse one, the new Roadhouse one, because I want to see it first before I listen. But I have listened to the one before, the old Roadhouse, I should say, the original Roadhouse episode, which was really great.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was fun. That's one I hadn't seen in a while, and I wanted to kind of prep myself for the new one, even though I kind of figured that the old one would probably be superior in my eyes, but still was fun too. It's always fun going down memory lane.
Yeah, and I think that's because the movie we're going to be talking about in a little bit, American Ninja 2. I think I've discovered between this one and the old Roadhouse, I saw the first two Predators recently, that I think with all the new movies and the way that new movies are shot nowadays and the way that they're sort of handled, sometimes you just kind of go back to those old ones and just remember what it was like. And I think the cops are coming for me right now. The new movie police are coming after me.
Sounds about right. Yeah. Don't you dare talk bad about the new movies. Hollywood police is after you.
Exactly. But yeah, it's almost like you have it's like listening to you guys talk about that Roadhouse, the original Roadhouse, where it was like right off the bat, joking about the fact that, like, when he gets the job at the Double Deuce, he takes his car keys and just throws them to a homeless person on the street. And it's like, yeah, there's no title change. There's none of that stuff, right? That's just,
Yeah.
in that movie, it was like a whole world where all that kind of stuff happened.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And so,
And you
yeah,
didn't question it back then. You just enjoyed. You just sat there and enjoyed it. Everything wasn't nitpicked to death.
right. Exactly. Yeah. I think what I realized that, like, that movie could be seen different ways from different people is when I showed that to a couple of roommates that I had, like late 2000s, and they burst out laughing when Marshall Teague is like dancing around with the pool cue to kind of show off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this is the perfect heel, right? He's doing heel stuff. They just
Right.
were laughing. It was like spit take kind of laughing.
Right. Oh, they had to love his line about prison then, I'm sure.
Right, exactly. Yes, yes, they did. Yeah, yeah. It's funny because on that episode you mentioned the whole the movies for guys who like movies on TBS.
Right.
And I remember that because I read an article about how the TBS programmers decided that the best time to have that movie on is at midnight. That's when they get the best showings. And I just remember a lot of times coming home really drunk, trying to get the room to stop spinning, and like maybe stuffing a cold burrito, that or whatever, eating a cold burrito.
Naturally. Yeah, you need
Yeah,
to get something on that stomach.
exactly. And then falling asleep, and then usually probably waking up sometime around 3 when Dallas Connection or something from Andy Stars was starting.
Yeah. The days of just watching movies on basic cable. I think that's why I like Pluto and Freevee. Even though there's the commercial, it's like, yeah, I grew up watching movies with commercials in it. And if I'm watching an old movie from that time, it takes me back.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I remember talking with Ty from Comeuppance about this, that like the scariest commercial was the Matthew Lesko, like how to get free movie, or not free movie, free money commercial, where
Yes.
he's like starts screaming at you, and it's like 3 in the morning, and he just
Right.
yeah. Some of those commercials could be a little bit rough.
Yeah.
Now, Chris, with you being the first time on the episode, I imagine there's a lot of overlap between our two audiences. But for people that haven't listened before, can you tell us a little bit about Bulletproof Action?
Bulletproof Action is actually going to turn 10 years old this August. I know you've been going even longer. How long have you been going?
So technically, I started in '07, but I don't think you can say 17 years because I had a kind of unplanned hiatus between like 2015 and 2019. So
Okay.
yeah, so maybe 13 if you count,
Gotcha.
yeah,
Okay.
if you take the hiatus out.
Yeah. But yeah, so we started, it was me and my buddy Chad, who we actually worked together in the Heartland Wrestling Association down in the Cincinnati area. And I was kind of the booker, and he was one of the wrestlers. And we would, pulling the curtain back, we would just kind of talk backstage, and, we often talk about action movies. So then years later, out of the blue, Chad's like, hey, you want to do an action movie website with me? And I'm like, well, I'm not doing the wrestling stuff anymore, so that means I have a ton of free time. So yes. Little did I know he was basically just setting me up to do most of the work, and he just chimes in from time to time, and it's now like my obsession, and I'm sitting there babysitting it and checking the stats and writing the things. And then we started the podcast because it's like, well, we should have had a podcast all along, and we did that. So
Yeah. Well, that was the thing with my podcast was where I started it in like 2014, and and then when I went in the hiatus, that period of time when I was on the hiatus is when everybody was getting, like the podcast world was growing. And so when I got back into it in like 2019, it was kind of that thing of like, you need a podcast at this point, as opposed to like you,
right.
it's like, yeah, you don't have any choice at this point.
Yeah.
If you've got a blog site, you got to have a podcast.
Yeah, a lot of people don't want to read. I could see that in the numbers all the time. It's like, it's not as big as it was last year.
Right. Yeah.
Should I still be doing this? But I enjoy doing it, so I still do it. But yeah, and the other thing was the pandemic.
Yeah.
Skewed those numbers. So like we were getting like, what's going on? I'd wake up and the thing would be like bigger than any. I'm like, what's going on? They're just looking for anything to do. They are bored. The world is bored right now because they are checking out Bulletproof Action left and right.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too is that like when you've got so many posts out there, it's like it's almost like I read about this artist, right? I kind of follow him on Twitter, Matt Farley of Motor Media, who he does low budget movies as well, but he has like a ton of songs on on Spotify, and he's got like 25,000 or something like that. So they each get like $2 or $3 a year, which when you add it all up comes up to like 65 grand a year. And it's kind of the same thing with our posts where it's like you've got like 1,000, 20, whatever the numbers is we have of posts, and if they each get a few views, it's like suddenly like the whole site gets a lot. But it's like the new ones, right? It's the question of the new ones, like
Right.
they don't get they don't always get the numbers that they used to get because, like you said, people don't read anymore. But there's enough people I think that go on IMDb that like they see something on Tubi and they're like, let me see what has anybody talked about this. And
Right.
a lot of times it'll be like I think we were talking about this, that it'll be like, you guys will have done it. Ty and Brett at Comeuppance will done it. Mitch Video Vacuum, then maybe I'll have done it too. And then like the other reviews, if you ever click on them, a lot of times they go to bad links because those people have given up doing
They've given up.
blogs.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like,
I like when something random will start getting like, wait, this thing's got like 15 people have read this. Why? And it's like something from 7 years ago.
right.
And then so then I start scurrying, like I'll start Googling, like, is this airing somewhere? And yeah, like one of them that does is Convict 762 with
yeah.
Frank Zagarino. If that thing gets a bunch of hits, I know it's probably airing on Comet, the over-the-air channel, and I think it got a streaming app too. And I'm like, yep, Comet must be showing Convict 762 again because people are checking it out, and it's been a while. So Comet, if you're listening, people at Comet, put on Convict 762 because site needs a couple extra hits every month. Get those ad money up.
Exactly. Yeah. I think the one that for us was Mom, like the horror movie Mom.
Okay.
And I could never figure out what it was. Because something the other thing too, I don't know if sometimes you'll see in like the Google Analytics or something, you'll find out what was the reason. Like I always joke that Army of One, the Joshua Tree from Dolph Lundgren, that was the most popular one because Kristen Alfonso got she has a body double, but her character
Right.
gets naked. And I have the lines Christian Alfonso and nude all in one sentence.
Nice.
And so everybody that's searching for Christian Alfonso nude finds that movie. And so that was like one of the one, but it is kind of funny, like you said, like there's sometimes something will create that traffic somehow. And it's funny you mentioned Comet because there used to be a bar here near where I live in South Philly, kind of a more alternative kind of Gen X kind of vibe to it, which is very different from the more standard dive bars that they have here in Philly, where it's just like a bunch of people going to yell at the Phillies game or the
Right.
Eagles game or something, and they would play Comet on the big screen TV behind the bar, and so it was always cool to just have some beers and just watch whatever crazy stuff was on there.
Yeah, that's I love channels like that where it just pulls out something that nobody is, and that's the only way they're gonna watch it because they're not gonna like seek that out. It's like, okay, if they happen upon it. One of my favorite search terms, favorite might be a loose word, but people in this world are extremely confused by the movie Double Impact.
Really?
Because they want to know who played Chad, or no, who played Alex. They know Chad is Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Right.
But who played Alex Wagner?
Right.
Was it Rob Van Dam?
Right.
Who was it?
Yes.
They do not. It's tough for them.
Yes.
But we get a lot of traffic for that from time to time.
That's awesome. So people type in who plays Alex.
Yeah, who plays Alex in Double Impact?
That's awesome. I never would have thought that would have been a great like kind of thing to put in the blog, as an SEO kind of thing that people would have been asking the question about.
And I don't even know that I guess I bet obviously I had to because they come to my site, but it's like I think later ones when I've done other things, I'm like, I have to make sure. Like for everybody wondering who plays, yeah, I'll do that. But yeah.
Right.
And it's like it's not like that's the only movie where somebody played a dual role and was like on the screen at the same time. I mean, that stuff was going on with Patty Duke way back when. So it's like I don't know why that. And in today's world with all the CGI, it's like you could have 14 Van Dams in a movie.
Right. Well, and not only that, but Van Damme has done it more than once. So it's not even
exactly.
Right? Yes. Yeah,
so why is it just that one? Why not Time Cop as well? Who was playing the past Max? Wasn't that his name there? I don't remember. But yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I never would have thought of that. That is hilarious. Yeah, it's kind of funny too because I think I'm always kind of curious with some of these movies when younger audiences find them, because we just sort of took a lot of that Van Damme stuff for granted, just the same way I think we took a lot of the Seagal stuff and you know, you know, Schwarzenegger was all that stuff. We just kind of took for granted that that's how a movie is and that's what's happening in the movie. Kind of the way we take for granted in Roadhouse that Swayze can just throw the keys to a homeless person and doesn't have to worry about pink slips or changes the title or any of that. And I do kind of wonder, like, yeah, like some of those things where it's like, well, who's playing Van Damme's brother? Does he have a twin brother or something like that? And it's like,
Right.
and yeah, because the other thing, right, is we didn't have, those kids today wouldn't have had soap opera. So it's like, as a kid, you're growing up, my mom used to watch the soap opera, like, I think it was All My Children, where a guy played himself. He played like himself, and I think he played like a
His evil twin. Yeah.
right, exactly. And it's like we just kind of take for granted that there's always twins and stuff like that. Whereas like maybe if you're younger, I guess maybe you just they think of the Olsen twins where there actually were one person was being
Right.
played by two people, so it's like the other way around.
Oh, yeah. And what about like Knight Rider? There was the evil Garth. He had
Yes,
he had the facial hair, but it was still David Hasselhoff.
right, right, exactly. Yeah, that just it happens so much that I guess we just, I mean, Cheech and Chong's next movie, right? It's like, Cheech is like waiting for his date to show up, so he plays like his cousin Red, and
Right.
it's like, yeah, so take that for granted. Well, that's actually kind of a funny segue here because the movie we're about to talk to deals with cloning, but we actually don't see multiple of the same person, despite the
No.
fact that this movie has cloning.
Well,
No.
come on now. Canon doesn't have that much money to be doing all that.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of times when somebody's on for the first time, I like the unofficial sort of tradition is we do a Dolph movie. When we were talking about a movie to watch, I mean, I for whatever Larry Poindexter. It's funny that how these movies come up in my brain or whatever. But Larry Poindexter, I think there was another movie of his that I posted on my archives, kind of thing. I was like, oh, there's Larry Poindexter, and of course I remember him from this movie.
Right.
And so then when I was reaching out to you about what movies to do, I was like, well, American Ninja 2, because I noticed you hadn't done it on your podcast, and I thought this is like such a fun movie that like to see if you'd rather do that instead of adult when you're like I'm always down for American Ninja 2. So
I didn't need to rewatch this for the show, but I rewatched it anyway.
mhm.
Like I don't need an excuse to do so, but I'm about to.
Yes, exactly. I'm the same way. This is one of those ones that you just can't. My description for it, it's relentlessly awesome. It just doesn't stop being awesome.
Yeah, I think Chris DiPetrillo from my site put it best is that American Ninja 2 is like the Godfather 2 of
Right.
canon films because it is very much that one of those sequels where you're like, is this one actually better than the first one? And it's like the first one's really really good, and this one's really it's like a debate, and it's like there's
Yes.
really no wrong answer to it.
Exactly. Yeah. Now one thing before we get into the film, this movie stars Michael Dudikoff, and he's someone who I haven't discussed him a lot on the site. I know the guys from come up with around a couple times to talk about our top five Dudikoffs, and I had Will from Exploding Helicopter on one time to talk about Virtual Assassin. But he, I always kind of think of him as like sort of in that upper echelon of like DTV action greats.
Yeah.
Where do you kind of put Dudikoff on that I guess pantheon? I don't know that list.
You have to. I mean, when you think of canon, I mean, other than Bronson and Norris, it's Dudikoff. And they were like the kings of the I mean, yeah, this stuff hit the theaters briefly, but they were the ones who kind of really blazed that trail of we're going to put these big action movies out in the video store and people are going to go crazy and we're going to make a ton of money, and that's where they made most of their money was the rentals. So yeah, I would say Dudikoff, he's like one of the trailblazers.
Yeah, and I think one of the problems that I run into with Dudikoff, and I don't know if you notice, have to have this on your site too, where it's like, when we first start these sites, way, back, 10 years ago, Dudikoff's the one that's like almost like every other week, right? You're doing a
Right.
Dudikoff movie, right?
Right.
But then unfortunately, he's not making much anymore. So
Yeah,
it's almost
he
like
run
you're out
out.
of Dudikoff. It's not like Dolph, where it's like Dolph is putting out 3 movies a year, it seems like
Right.
every year. So it's
He
like he stays current. Dudikoff, it's like you almost like you have to remind yourself to go back and, when you're making lists and stuff like that, oh, Dudikoff is still there, at least for me, I think.
No, I agree. Like last year, I got Black Thunder, which I had never like when I get something I've never seen, it's so exciting.
Right.
It's like, oh my, Black Thunder. I never covered that. I've never even seen that one. So hell yeah, I'm gonna watch it and review it. why wouldn't I? So yeah, even just recently with Van Damme, The Order. I had never.
Yes.
There was a moment where like I was the biggest Van Damme fan, and then at some point I don't know, it just fizzled out for me, and I just kind of stopped watching them, and then I got back into it once like the JCVD movie came out, and then Blu-ray was kind of becoming a thing, and I was getting the older, like I got Kickboxer, and I'm like, okay, and I was like, oh yeah, this is why I love you, Jean-Claude Van Damme. You're so awesome, and so then but there's still a few more. I think like Second in Command. I feel like I saw a bit of that on USA Network once, and there's a couple there that I'm like still got to fill in some gaps. So yeah, when I could find those, and it's like it's time to finally watch this, it's exciting. Because, and I think that's you kind of talking about it. I think we took for granted like these guys were just going to be around forever.
Well, that's definitely
like
true.
we were just going to keep getting these kind of action movies until we were dead. Right. Unfortunately, that is not the case.
Yes. Well, because you know what it was. I remember, in the late 2000s, early 2010s. You're looking at like Death Wish 5, and you're saying like, wow, Bronson, he was in his 70s when he made this. That's getting up there, Right. But these guys were only in their 50s then, so it's like you felt like you had all this time, right, until right. They were going to be Bronson. Now they're in the Bronson Death Wish 5 age, and now it's like, oh man, are they, we want to keep getting stuff from them, but then it's like, on the other hand, it's like, yeah, it's like, are they going to have to use, remote control soccer balls in their films going forward?
More movies need remote control soccer balls. I could tell you that right now.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the other star in this, of course, is Steve James, who unfortunately left us, way too early.
Yeah.
And for me, when my friends and I first saw this movie in high school, so in the mid-90s, I guess it wouldn't have been long, yeah, mid-90s, because it came out in 87. It was actually Steve James that drew us in, not Dudikoff, because we just loved him in this movie. And I don't know about you, but I think, like I would put like maybe like Riverbend or like Street Hunter as like a better all-around Steve James movie. But I feel like this is like my favorite performance of his. I don't know where you put this one.
Yeah, he's really good in it. He's like obviously quite the ladies' man in this one. Yeah. He's not happy about where he's going, but until he sees those ladies, and then old Larry tells him they're gonna hit the beach and be tops, bottoms, everything's going. Suddenly his tune changes. So he was a very horny Steve James in this one, and maybe that's where his energy level was up. I don't know.
Yeah, because he had two things on his mind, right? Women and fights.
Right.
He was just like, get me into. I mean, the "I want fresh meat" line. My friends and I just played that one over and over again. It's one. We read about with the first movie that like he wanted to be American Ninja, and he probably from a martial arts standpoint, he should have been the American Ninja. Right. And I guess like, I don't know if it was Golan or Globus who wanted what they called an all-American guy. And that's where they wanted Dudikoff, where Dudikoff was kind of more of a dramatic actor at that time. And you almost feel like with this movie, I don't know if it was Sam Furstenberg's idea or somebody, but they kind of make up the difference where these are like, he's not Dudikoff's sidekick, they're a team.
Right. And, it's Larry Poindexter is more the sidekick. He's more like the second banana to them. They're like an equal team. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that worked better. I think if Steve James had was upset, and I'm sure it probably wasn't a matter of like he was going to take it out on Dudikoff or anything like that. But if he felt like, okay, I'm deserving of that. It seems like maybe if Furstenberg felt the same way, he found a way to split the difference. And so, Dudikoff's still the star, but in terms of how the movie works, you get, they're partners there.
Yeah. I think the more salty would have been in 3, where they didn't just let him, they had to replace Dudikoff with David Bradley. Yeah. I think that's where Steve James probably should have been a little saltier.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause he could have been the American Ninja in that movie for sure.
And even if they wanted to bring Bradley in as his sidekick, I don't know, but yeah, that's where, and I think that's why at one point, like I didn't see 3 for a long time. I was one of the it's no Dudikoff, no me. So now that I've watched it, it's not as good as the first 2, but I guess we can make the comparison to The Godfather again. Neither is Godfather 3 right. as good as Godfather 1 and 2. So The Godfather continues.
Exactly. We didn't have the Andy Garcia kind of prop it, like I really love the Andy Garcia in Godfather 3, and American Ninja needed its Andy Garcia.
Yeah. Yeah. And does Sam Furstenberg have a daughter he could have put in the movie? Sam didn't do it. I think it was Cedric Sundstrom who did
Right.
the third one.
Yeah, because it looks like the same year Furstenberg had Riverbend come out um
Okay.
with Steve
With
James. They
Steve
both came out
James.
in
Okay.
'89. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That would have been great if Furstenberg, yeah. That was Furstenberg's godfather.
Or
Is
maybe just get Lucinda Dickey to be in there.
Yes, exactly.
He had to have a bond with her after the two movies they did together. So
Right. Yeah. No, this movie, of course, I mean, talking about like sort of ninja movies. I mean, the canon ninja world was huge at that time, and I think, like you talked about with the video store, right? That like, if you were a kid and you went to the video store and you saw Ninja on the clamshell, you were going to grab that one off the shelf probably right
absolutely.
away.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, because I know you on Bulletproof, you did like a top ninja list.
We sure did.
Yeah, I can't remember, was this one or the first one that kind of came near the, I think, of course, there was the Shokuzugis that were up there as well.
I want to say I'm gonna. You know what? I could probably. It was probably top three.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think. Yeah, I think Revenge of the Ninja was the number one, which
that's
I
right.
don't disagree with.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny thing, right? They had Shokazugi, right, who kind of, he was doing his thing with the ninja movies, and on Canon's side, and then you had these ones with Dudikoff. Um, but it was like, the whole, I guess, I don't, I always joke that like ninjas are one of the few elements in an action movie that can be magic, right? There you can have
Right.
magic in them. And this movie, I think, does a lot of that. I mean, I think, it's interesting how with some of those Shokazugi ones, they're a little bit more serious, but they still have that magical element.
Well, yeah. It's ninja. It's just it's the nature of the ninja mysticism.
I read about ninjas. He said to take a kind of a bus ride out into to Jersey to, because here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, marijuana is not legal. So I think Ohio just legalized either
It is.
recreational.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're surrounded by legalized recreational here in Pennsylvania. But I'd go out to New Jersey to one of the dispensaries and take the bus out there and kill time. And I was reading Wikipedia about ninjas, and I was curious about just what real ninjas were. And Wikipedia kind of gave me a sense of it. But one of the things I learned is apparently real ninjas did not dress in black. They dressed as like whatever their enemies were. Like that's how they disguised themselves to look like the enemies. But I guess in Japanese theater, like I don't know if like the 19th century, to depict how they would be invisible by blending in with their surroundings, they would just make them black, and that was how
Mm.
that worked. And it kind of stuck. And so of course now, I mean, that's like the first thing we hear in this movie, right? Is that men in black suits carried away the Marines. That's like, oh, they're
Sound
ninjas.
familiar?
Right.
Does that sound familiar to you?
Right. Exactly.
Sure does. Sure does, Jackson.
Yeah, because we don't quite get the full on line that we get in American Ninja, right? Where Steve James is like, it looks like the work of ninjas, sir. It's like one of the best, and an actor always has to be able to pull off a line like that. They've got to deliver it straight, like they've got to believe it themselves. And yeah, Steve James pulling off that line is one of the best ever.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. You're coming into this world, this comic book like world of American Ninja, and it's I think that was like Sam Furstenberg's thought on it was like, okay, this is a comic book movie, basically,
Yeah,
with a heavy dose of bromance.
right, exactly. This one, yeah, this one goes even further. I mean, the team up we get, and so maybe this is a good time. Maybe we'll get stuck in a little bit on the film here. On American Ninja. So I'll do a quick synopsis, and then we'll kind of start breaking it down as we go to different parts. And if I jump too far ahead, and there's something that I missed that you want to mention, by all means, just be like, hey, you forgot to mention this one part there. So yeah, as we kind of go through it. I mean, the synopsis is really just, there's some Marines going missing on a Caribbean island where they're just supposed to be there to help the ambassador, or guard the ambassador. So who else are you going to call in to find out what's happened to these missing Marines? But, Joe Armstrong and Curtis Jackson. And so they get called in, and it doesn't take them long to figure out what's happening. ninjas are stealing people and taking them to this island here. So as they break it down further, they realize that this is a conspiracy that goes all the way to the top. Everybody on this island's, political system is involved in the cover up. And they've got to figure out what's going on here and break this whole thing down and, figure out where these evil ninjas are coming from, what they're really up to. And that's kind of the bulk of it, I think.
The canon is not going to have a very deep story or anything. It's going to be pretty straightforward, and that's all it needed to be.
Yeah.
And that's why I could watch this. I could go watch it again right when we're done, and it won't affect me.
No, and I've had, for me too, I have a very short attention span now. Like as I've gotten older, my attention span has gotten worse and worse. And the thing about this movie that kind of surprised me was that I didn't check the slider bar. Like I'm usually like, okay,
Nice.
How far into this am I?
Right.
And I was just like watching it. I was like, oh, I'm, like next thing I know, it's like I was 45 minutes in, and I was just, And it doesn't. I think there's a moments where it could have gone in wrong directions and it didn't, which I think helps.
Right.
And as we kind of talk about it here, I think some of those points will come up.
Yeah, this is one of those movies where it's like I'll catch it. Maybe like I said, I'll see it on Pluto or Freevee or something. I was like, oh well, I'll watch up to this point. And then I'm like, well, wait a minute, I'm this far. Let me get to this scene, and then I could just shut it. And then I'm like, well, no. And then it's like, well, I may as well just finish it now.
Exactly, because it really gets right in there. I mean, the movie starts where we get like kind of the setup where these three guys riding on sport bikes go to a kind of dirty, out of the way bar, and one of the two,
Beggar bar.
The blind beggar bar. It doesn't look like a great place, but it's that idea, right, of like trying to make a Western. Like it's the saloon, right? You're kind of, they still have the saloon doors there. And a guy with a South African accent, starts giving them a hard time. And next, a bar fight ensues, and one of the three guys kind of slinks away and watches them while the other two get carried off. And so that's our missing guys. And then it's like almost immediately after, I think, right, that we get our heroes waiting at the airport for.
And don't forget though, Toto.
Oh right,
was
yes, Toto
hiding in the corner behind the pinball machine, and he saw the whole thing.
That's right. We've got our kid, right? So you can't have a movie take place in the Southern Hemisphere without a local street urchin kind of kid who knows everything, has the whole place wired, and is willing to help you out for a price.
Exactly.
And so Toto, hiding behind the pinball machine, sees what happens here, so he knows what's going on. And then I think this is one of my all-time favorite picking people up at the airport scenes. With the car with Larry Poindexter, and then of course our shady guy who got his friends busted.
Tommy Taylor,
he's driving them there. He's kind of got a unibrow, kind of not. And he's kind of edgy as well. And our heroes are there in their full army outfits. Poindexter makes a point. The whole kind of Marines army thing comes up a little bit because these guys are Marines. But then they get in the car and they're driving, and it's kind of this thing where that our heroes are learning that things are much more laid back on this island, right? That the commanding officer surfs, that they just kind of dress in regular clothes, they party. But the other thing is that Guns N' Roses Move to the City is playing in the background as they get picked up.
How about that? Canon. That's real music.
Yeah. It's like, when we first saw this, I think when I first saw this, it was like 93, maybe 92, 93, something like that, when we were in high school. And then I didn't think it was as crazy of an idea that Move to the City was in this. But seeing it later, I was like, wait a sec, that really is Move to the City. Like that's like the actual song that was off Appetite for Destruction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they I don't know what kind of deal they made, but I mean, a couple. I mean, I think what was it? What is that movie called? Oh, it's an Albert Pune movie. Dangerously Close.
Oh, right, with the Smithereens.
Yeah, it has Robert Palmer. It's like it was like, okay. So once in a while, canon was unpredictable.
Yes. Well, it also in the credits, it doesn't list it as Geffen Records. It lists it as like Uzi Suicide. So is it possible that they got the rights to it before Guns N' Roses signed on with Geffen Records? Is that, I don't know if that's a possibility.
anything's possible with Menachem Golan.
Right. Yes. Yes. You never know. And then, of course, also our heroes. We've got Joe Armstrong, who's kind of keeping it close to the vest, kind of inspecting things. Whereas, Curtis Jackson is complaining, but also, realize.
Until he sees the bikini women.
Right. Exactly. At that point, he's like, oh, I think I'm going to like it here. Yeah. And then when they get to the office, they meet their commanding officer, who is very mustachioed. So I didn't realize the actor's real name is Jeff Celentano. It's not Jeff
Yes.
Weston.
Yeah, I don't know why he goes by Weston in this one, but I know he's popped up in other movies that I've seen. I feel like The Revenger with Zags himself, Mr. Frank Zagarino.
Yes.
Obviously, he must have just like made his name there in old South Africa.
Right. I remember Demonic Toys. He was in that one as well. So he did some Charles Band movie, Full Moon movies as well. So yeah, he kind of Silence of the Hams, I guess, as well was something he was in. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think who he looks like. I can't remember the actor's name, but the guy who was in Top Gun, who was Val Kilmer's co-pilot, who ends up being in Pacific Blue. He kind of has a little bit of that guy's vibe.
Gotcha. Yeah, I could see it.
Yeah. And so this guy,
I always liked it as a G.I. Joe fan. There was the character Wild Bill in that one, and he has a mustache, and he was like a cowboy. He flew the Dragonfly chopper, and I saw this, right after, as my G.I. Joe love was still going on in the 80s. So, to have ninjas, I mean, that's the whole thing. You had the ninjas on G.I. Joe, now the ninjas are in the movie, and it was, my head was exploding.
Right.
Like the American ninjas and the Delta Force, I mean, Invasion USA, I'm like, this is everything in the world to me. Thank you, Canada.
Yes. Actually, yeah, I kind of buried the lead on that the commanding officer's name is Wild Bill. That was also something that hurt Jackson's sensibilities. He was like, your commanding officer's name is Wild Bill? And
this is his car? He doesn't know you borrowed it? What's going on?
Yes. And it's funny because Larry Poindexter, now, he's older. He plays like the dad on cell phone commercials whose daughter is dating a goofy guy and he's giving the goofy guy a hard time. Whereas this
used to be the goofy guy.
Exactly. He's the one who older dads don't want their daughter.
Yeah, mate, because he knows. I know what I was like when I was his age.
Right, exactly. And he's playing that part perfectly. So after Wild Bill, he kind of gives them the load. He's kind of like, I don't know why you guys are here, but I was told to give you whatever help you need. And I don't know if it's because it's the mustache or what, but he's hard to read here, right? It's like, is he happy that they're here to help them? Or is he not suspicious because they're army guys and they're from outside the team? Like, we don't really know at this point, but we know he's got a bald sergeant who's yelling at them and is angry and all that already.
Yeah, isn't that Lynn Sparrowhawk, who's another one who pops up? And yeah, there's like people where you know where the movie was made just based on some of the actors.
Exactly.
Like if you're in the Philippines, Jim Gaines is in your movie. Okay,
exactly right. Vic Diaz, Mike Body. Yeah,
they're in there.
Yes. Yeah, these guys here. Yeah, I mean, the fact that we're supposed to be on a Caribbean island, but some of the baddies just speak with South African accents. It's just kind of how it is.
Yeah, and they did a pretty good job. I mean, I think the music is helpful. It kind of has that tropical thing and the music was done by George S. Clinton.
Right,
who would do Austin Powers and Mortal Kombat.
Yes.
And so it's like, yeah, he was like a legitimate guy too, but they must have caught him early.
Well, so when you read his bio, he says he honed his craft on these ninja movies.
There you go.
So this is how he got good. It's like, Spiro Rosatos, right, making PM flicks and then moving on to, Fast and Furious. It's like the same thing, right? You got George S. Clinton making these ninja movies.
You got to start somewhere.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, but that's a great point because the music does help this. It kind of gives it a very Caribbean feel as much as we are in South Africa. Yeah, and so at this point, right, our heroes are invited to go on a boat trip. So
they're going to go water skiing. What else would a bunch of Marines do in the afternoon?
Exactly.
Instead of guarding the embassy like they're supposed to.
Right.
Like we never actually see a Marine guarding the embassy in this movie.
No, we don't even know that the only time we find out that there's an embassy is there's a party, and
But that's
'Cause
not even it. That's at the governor's mansion.
right, right. The only time the ambassador ever gets mentioned is when Wild Bill needs to get his approval for things, and
Yeah. And
you
he's
know,
at the party, and then he's there at the end.
yeah,
The ambassador.
exactly.
That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
He
that's
had an
all we get for
easy payday for him.
exactly,
2
exactly.
scenes and he was done.
Yes, yeah, yeah. There's a lot of people with easy paydays in this movie. Yeah, we get a lot of those kind of short scenes for people for sure that kind of in and out quickly. I mean, our baddie, who we find out later, the lion, Gary Conway, he doesn't get a lot in this movie.
And
We just hear about him.
he wrote it too, did he not?
Oh, he might have, yeah.
I think he did. I
He was
think
one of
he
the three writers. Yeah,
There you go. Yeah.
yeah,
Just kind of like a James Booth, like write yourself in as the villain and get yourself 2 paydays.
exactly. Exactly. What was the one that he wrote? I'm trying to think. Over the Top, right? He wrote Over the Top. So great with ninja movies and arm wrestling movies. So
A jack of all trades.
exactly, exactly. So so our guys go out in the boat. So we've got Larry. So we've got Tommy, right? Our Judas, or Benedict Arnold of the crew, who's been like selling off his Marine friends to the baddies. He's driving the boat with Larry Poindexter and another guy who just happens to be another guy that's hanging out with them. And then Dudikoff, who went quickly to a Sedaris set, got himself a body glove wetsuit, so he's all set to go. And Jackson's got his bathing suit on. They're ready to kind of take advantage of this. So as they're out there, they fall asleep, which I don't know how that works. I guess it's
Yeah,
just you
it's like
ride on a boat.
it's like driving in a car. Everybody falls asleep except the driver.
Right, exactly. And so Tommy's the driver, and he uses that time to pull the I guess the spark plug. Or he pulls like the ignition, or
Yeah.
yeah. And so the boat shuts down. It's like, oh, we gotta push it to shore or whatever. Dudikoff already knows, right? He's seen somebody who's kind of in Tommy's situation before. He knows he's hiding something, and so they get to the beach. Steve James they decide to split up when they get to the beach because the guys want to go out swimming. So Dudikoff has Steve James or Curtis Jackson watch Tommy, keep an eye on Tommy to see what he's doing while they're swimming. While Dudikoff inspects the beach, and that's when he gets waylaid by ninjas.
Oh yeah, we get the classic beach brawl.
Yes. And the easy thing that this movie could have done was had Dudikoff get beaten by these ninjas and taken somewhere. Maybe get captured, whatever. That's the easy thing this movie could have done. Where this movie starts being really great is they don't go in that direction at all. It's Dudikoff doing all kinds of ninja stuff to take out this whole band of ninjas that are attacking him.
And yeah, he does get a little help from his boy Jackson. But at first it's just Michael Dudikoff versus the world.
Yeah, I mean, what I love about it is there's almost a sense of like he knows because he's a ninja himself. He knows all the tricks. It's like, oh, you guys are trying to get me with the net. I know the net.
Right.
And he grabs it and pulls them down, and then kind of swings it around and hits them with it. Oh, you're gonna hit me with the spear? Oh, I know the spear, and he just catches it and throws it back. Or even the arrow. He catches an arrow that shot at him and just throws it back.
Which he did in the first one. I mean, he's a skilled arrow catcher.
Yeah. Yeah. Which it not only is he a skilled arrow catcher, but he can throw them back.
That's not with almost the same velocity as the bow.
Right.
And accuracy as well. Yeah, he's good.
Right. Yeah. And so then we get Steve James realizes what's happening when they get back to the shore. And of course, the other thing I forgot too is that Dudikoff figured out very quickly what was wrong with the boat, and he fixed it. But then he goes. Steve James goes on the shore and runs afoul of ninjas himself, and has to take them out. And he's got, what is it like? It's like a hook for, I guess, latching onto the dock that he's using as a weapon.
Yeah, it definitely was. Yeah, some kind of staff with the hook at the end. So he's good.
Yeah,
he's twirling around. He's got him going.
Yeah. So this is. Again, it's they dispatch these ninjas pretty quickly. We do get our first look at the what is his character's name is Tojo Ken. I'm trying to think how we would describe, like, he really gives off a lot of Marshall Teague in Roadhouse energy. This character,
nice.
Yeah. I'm not sure, if there's guys that he's fucking in prison that are like Dudikoff. But
A
you can
guy
see
in
him.
prison would love to have the hair of Michael Dudikoff.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So we see him, and they lock eyes as a sense of like, okay, this is going to be like kind of an impending battle, kind of like an old martial arts movie kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you get that first stare down and okay, here's our final battle. I love the always the foreshadowing, like, okay, here's our final battle. And of course, Tojo Ken was played by Mike Stone, who
Yeah.
was originally supposed to kick off the whole ninja craze for canon until they were like, yeah, no, you're not a very good actor. Is Franco Nero nearby? Okay. Oh, he is. Good.
Right. Which is funny because it kind of gets to the point of ninjas in general because again also Dudikoff is not really a great martial artist either. I mean you kind of see it even in these scenes, right, where he's just
Right.
kind of throwing people around. It doesn't look like he's got the kind of skill, of course, that James has. But if you get a really good actor in the part, the ninja stuff you can work out through the magic of cinema.
Right. That's why you wear the ninja mask, because then you can put anybody under there.
Right, exactly. As 24 Hours to Midnight, as we saw with Cynthia Rothrock, right? If you don't have
Right.
any more footage of her, just put someone in a ninja costume and play the part. And we may or may not believe it. We'll go with it. Um, yeah, so the guys get back. They get debriefed by Wild, or they're debriefing Wild Bill, and they let it be known, hey, we were waylaid by ninjas, and of course nobody believes them. In particular, Len Sparrowhawk, right? He's just like yelling about it, how obnoxious these guys are for thinking there's
Yeah.
ninjas. But Wild Bill, he sends everybody else out of the room and wants to talk to Dudikoff and James alone. And he's like, I kind of believe you guys. I think, I'm going to give, what do you say? I'm going to give you a week to figure out this this
Yeah, he
whole
was
ninja
gonna he
deal.
was gonna call right away, and then yeah, it was Dudikoff who convinces him, or Joe convinces, hey, give us a week. I think we got something. We gotta investigate. We gotta do what we're here for.
Right, exactly.
And of
Uh,
course, this is the scene where he's not necessarily always talking to Michael Dudikoff.
right, exactly.
The very infamous scene where we get the stand-in for Michael Dudikoff, clearly
Right.
on camera.
Right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, and it's one of those things I think that we take for granted now because you watch a Seagal movie and it just or the Bruce Willis films that kind of came later in his career, that it's like they did it so much back then, but you forget that it was a novelty when you'd see it in these movies at that time.
Yeah, the only place I really remember seeing it was the Master TV show when Lee Van Cleef would be in a fight. That was clearly never Lee Van Cleef.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That I believe that TV show is on Tubi. I watched a few episodes because I hadn't seen it in forever, and I remember MST3K like cobbled some episodes together to make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think no, that was done because me and my cousin went to the video store one day. We
Okay.
see this thing like called the Master, and we saw that it had Sho Kasugi, and we're like, oh yeah, yeah, we love Sho Kasugi movies. I've never heard of this one, and we get it home, and it's like, oh, this is a freaking TV show put together. Like, oh, you're not. This isn't going to be as good. They're not going to be killing each other. There's going to be no boobs in this. There's not going to be nothing.
Yeah, it's funny how again like the Wild West of VHS at that time, which I mean I guess there's a Wild West of Tubi and streamer and free streamers and stuff like that now, but like between like the Godfrey Ho movies where it was just like Godfrey Ho is just going to take Richard Harrison's two
Yes.
scenes in a ninja movie and just put 20 movies together and throw them on or like you said, like like, oh, we're just going to cobble together a couple of episodes of Master Ninja and put it on the shelves. You just there was a lot of rolling of the dice when you were at the video store at that time. You really didn't know what you were going to get.
Right,
That's
there was
part of the
no
fun.
IMDb to investigate this stuff. It was just like
Right.
you looked at the cover and I'm like, this looks awesome.
Yeah,
Or it had like the Shokas, like, okay, it's a
yeah.
ninja movie with Sho Kasugi. How could we go wrong? Well, we did. We went
We did.
way wrong.
Yeah. Well, it's when you get one of the Van Patten kids who's having trouble enunciating, again with Lee Van Cleef, who it's like, as a kid, you're growing up, I mean, my dad watched Westerns all the time when I was a kid on like Sunday afternoons, they'd be on. So it's like, here's the guy from all the Westerns is, in a ninja TV show, with a Van Patten that's having trouble talking. And yeah, you like you said, you wanted, you see Sho Kazugi and you've seen his movies and you're like, okay, this guy can really get after it. But yeah, the video store, it's amazing kind of how many elements from the old video store are now on the streaming thing,
Yeah.
like the ways to get us in, even with the fact that with the streaming, right, you can just turn it off after 5 minutes, if you want to.
Hmm.
You're not stuck with you didn't pay
Right.
for it and you don't have it.
I always thought, with VR and everything, I'm surprised they haven't made like a Tubi VR thing where it looks like you're going through a video store
Right.
and you're picking this up off the actual shelf and taking it up and doing that. And then you just start your movie. Somebody should do that.
Yes, that would be the best if it was like, you could kind of go through it like that. And, to be maybe a guy behind the counter with a ponytail who's, uh,
They could pump that Blockbuster smell in somehow.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the Blockbuster one would be even better, right? Because you just have the kid behind the counter who's getting paid minimum wage who just doesn't want to be there, right?
Right.
Who's just like,
Yeah.
and who has like no choice but to like come down hard on your late fees because, he wants to keep that job for another week until he finds something better. And so he can't afford to get fired for giving you a break on your late fees. Yeah. So back on the movie here. So Dudikoff is in bed, and this is a great scene where Larry, or sorry, Tommy.
Tommy,
I'm getting Tom. And actually, we keep calling Larry Poindexter's character Larry when he's actually Charlie.
Charlie, yeah.
Yeah. But Tommy, he just got off the phone with the baddies, and the baddies were like, "No, you got to take care of this Dudikoff guy. You can't, I'm sorry." And he's like, "But they're tough. We don't want to mess with them." He's like, "No, you got to take care of it." So, I don't know how you can't bargain with baddies when when you're in bad with the baddies, like you can't just sort of bargain your way out of it. They're not going to be like, "Oh, yeah, leave that Dudikoff guy alone."
He is in too deep. His
Exactly.
old Tommy Taylor.
Exactly. So he sneaks into to Dudikoff's bedroom with a backpack too. I don't know what he was doing with a backpack, but and of course Dudikoff, he's a ninja. He's not going to fall for that. He catches him right away, and Tommy spins this whole tale about how he's in too deep and he wants to get out, and Dudikoff's the only one that can help him. So meet me at the dive bar at tomorrow afternoon. Come alone.
Yeah.
And again, it's another area where this movie could have gone in a bad direction. Because Dudikoff shows up. Of course, he has to fight the South Africans that are outside that, beat up the Marines in the first scene. He's got to dispatch them. One really great scene, because he's flipping people over. He's grabbing them by the back of the neck and flipping them over and stuff like that. He's got one guy in a kind of a judo or jujitsu hold, and there's a little dog kind of nipping around near him that was kind of taking in the action, which I thought was really nice. Yeah, I don't know what kind of dog it was, but it's just kind of, just happened to be on set at the time. And it was like, hey, that's Michael Dudikoff.
I was gonna say, yeah, that dog, that just was a happy accident, I bet.
Yeah, exactly. But he goes into the bar. He asks where to find Tommy. The bartender tells him, down the corridor or whatever. So he goes down the corridor. There's Tommy, and suddenly everybody shows up to ambush him. And so you think, yeah, he's going to get it here, but no, he gets to the high ground because the room that Tommy's in this sort of brothel place has a balcony, or kind of like an upper loft area,
Right.
which is perfect for when you're getting ambushed by baddies. He pops up there, and so now he's got a choke point, right, where it's like you got to come up the stairs if you want to get to Dudikoff, or you got to try to climb up the railing. One way or the other, it's going to be tough. So he's able to take these guys out pretty easily. Larry again is being kind of squirrely about the whole thing. He starts to kind of tell him the truth about stuff, and then out of nowhere, Larry hears something outside. It's almost like you would think that he was making it up, the way he just suddenly hears something outside. And it's almost like the old SNL sketch, right? Where, there's a knock on the door and it's like, oh, land shark, and the person opens the door and the shark bites him. It's like Tommy opens the shades and he gets a spear to the chest. And that's it for him. But there's some ninjas around, and Dudikoff, he didn't fight with the ninjas, did he? They just killed Tommy and ran off.
He fought like the tough, the goon, the bar goons, but no, he did not get any ninja time at this point. He just had some on the beach, so he's got to wait.
Exactly. We don't want to saturate this movie with ninjas right now,
Right.
right? Just a little bit here or there. Sprinkle the ninjas in a little bit. You don't need to get too crazy with them. Um, so they go back. So Dudikoff kind of lets everybody know what happened. And I think that's when they get the word that they've got to go to the party. Right?
Yes.
I don't think there's anything that happens in between then.
No, and they will go dressed as Marines to
Right.
eliminate any confusion as to why Army Rangers are
Yeah.
working as cipher. What's a cipher clerk? I always mean to look that up. Like, what do they
That's
do?
It's right. I forgot. So I guess would they be getting Morse code from?
Yeah, from yeah.
So yeah, so they're at this party. Steve James immediately finds a woman to mingle with there, that he's having a good time with. And this is also where
And do you know who that woman is?
she looked familiar, but
It's his. It ended up being his actual wife.
oh no way, that's the one he
Yeah,
married.
like they met on. I think they met on Delta Force, and then she was in this movie. I think they were dating at this point. I don't think they were married quite yet, but yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Hmm.
That is amazing. Um, and there is ex-wife now. So they had a baby together. They had a daughter together.
Yes, they did have a. Yeah, they had a kid.
Wow, I didn't. Well, so that actually kind of makes sense then, because at the very end of the movie, right, there's a line that kind of makes more sense, that if they ad-libbed or made it for for the movie, about I'll see you again, or maybe I won't see you again, or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, excellent. So they're kind of doing, and then at sort of kind of there's kind of two things that sort of happen almost at once. The police officer, the police chief, or whatever,
Inspector Singh, yes.
Inspector Singh, right? He comes over and says, "Hey, Dudikoff, we have some witnesses that place Dudikoff at the scene of that guy's spear murder. Um,
Right.
we want to bring him down for questioning," which, of course, Wild
Very
Bill does.
serious question.
It's very serious, right? Some very serious questioning. Wild Bill is not really interested in that, right? He knows it's bad news, right? If they do that, so they're kind of stalling a bit before they say they're going to let him go. And lo and behold, a woman shows up and starts screaming, and she slaps Gary Conway, who we discover is the baddie, the lion. She slaps
Leo the
him.
Lion, yeah. She
Yeah.
calls him a bastard like 2 times, which is anytime I hear the word bastard in a movie, I'm a happy man.
Yes.
And she like gets them back to back. You bastard, and smacks him one. Tries to do it again, but old
Yeah.
Tojo steps in and like, no, you're not gonna slap my boss twice with me
Right.
standing right here.
Exactly. And so then it's like the police officer, Inspector Singh, is like, "Well, take her away." As opposed to being like, "Oh, what's going on here?" He's just like, "No, take her away," because
Yeah.
he's in on it, right? He's
And yeah, not hiding it there. Yeah, like you could at least have like put on a show like, oh yes ma'am, we'll take you down and get your statement or something.
right. Wink at him, right? Exactly. So they take Tojo Ked and company. They take her away in a car, and this is the point where I'm thinking like, okay, we could go into the Dudikoff gets hauled into for questioning. How many movies, right, where the hero ends up in jail, right? Could be, one of the various kickboxers with Sasha Mitchell, right, where he's, in jail for whatever reason. Kickboxer 5 too, right, where Mark Dacascos ends up in jail. It's like that kind of thing. That's where this could have gone. And instead, Wild Bill says, "I don't know that we've ever let the Marines have ever let a lady down." And Steve James says, "Right, sir, we're going to go kick some ass." And it's like, "Oh yeah, we're not going to jail. There's no prison. There's no, long drawn out, interrogation scene, or how are we going to get him out of jail scene, or any of that kind of stuff." No, they just go find Larry Pondexter and chase after them.
Yeah, Inspector Singh's like, oh, watch him. I have to go take care of this, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Exactly.
not to dispute Wild Bill's claim that the United States Armed Forces never let a woman down, but I would assume, just hear me out, that any soldier who died that had a mom or a sister or a wife, they probably felt a little let down.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
I'm thinking they felt a little let down. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. And I also think that there were situations probably where women weren't always treated the best. The Tailhook Association, which I guess would that have, the tail hook situation, would that have been after this? That big controversy where the tailhook pilots. The only thing I remember most about that was the elephant that dispensed beer that they discussed on 2020.
Yeah,
But
I'm not sure on the timeline on that, but yeah, there's
yeah,
definitely I think old Wild Bill was exaggerating there a bit,
exactly.
but
But
it's fine because it leads to one of the greatest scenes in cinematic history.
it absolutely is. It's again, this movie could have gone in the worst direction possible, where Dudikoff is hauled off to jail by Inspector Singh and he's being questioned. Instead, we go back to the dive bar where Dudikoff runs upstairs to try to free the girl, free the woman. So he's upstairs, and Steve James is like, "Hey, I'm ready to go. Let's rock and roll here." And he and Larry Poindexter Poindexter's pretending to help
Right.
Steve James fight. And I'm trying to think if we kick it off with everybody, the dog pile on Steve James.
Dog pile.
Yeah. There's even a woman involved in that.
Yeah, they're getting up, and he does his big Hulk up and just
Right.
and the bowling pin sound effect, and
Yeah.
it is like and the music kicks in with that Caribbean vibe,
Yeah.
and I have watched this scene. I mean, this scene I've watched a bazillion times because
Yeah.
it's someone kindly put it on YouTube, so I will watch it.
Oh, nice.
If you check the count on that, a good chunk of those are probably me.
I had no idea because so this was the scene that my friends and I, if you go from the beginning of the scene all the way to Steve James saying I want fresh meat when they're outside,
Right.
we probably wore the VHS tape
Yeah.
on People's Video and Kittery, Maine. We wore the tape out just watching that over and over again. It was just essentially like start from that piece, from they're in the bar and Steve and just play it out and then just rewind it back. And we just did that over and over again. Just like you said, it's just such a fantastic fight scene.
And I would like to give props to an unsung hero in this scene, the bartender,
Oh yes.
who's just continuing to like dry glasses and put them on the shelf. There's
Right.
things flying around. People, it's total pandemonium. She's unaffected by it. It's just a typical day at the Blind Beggar, and she's there. She is paid to serve drinks and get those glasses washed and ready for more drinks. Because if you got no glasses, you can't serve drinks. So
Right. Well, even better is that Larry Poindexter's behind the bar, hitting on a woman, pouring drinks for her
yeah,
while the
now
bartender's still working.
that part she probably would have gotten in trouble for because he's giving away free drinks basically.
Right. Right. It's one of those things where it's almost like, at that bar, they had a protocol for when a bar fight breaks out, just keep going about your business. If somebody ends up behind the bar, let them do what they're going to do. Just, you just keep cleaning, because you're right. It's almost like little like Grand Theft Auto video game or something like that, where you just have you're driving the cab and you run somebody over and the pedestrians are just walking by. Like, you didn't just run somebody over. The way she's just sort of cleaning glasses while Larry Poindexter pours himself and this woman at the bar a drink. And then he invites the woman, he asks the woman out on a date and she smashes a beer bottle over his head.
Yeah.
And all of that happens while she's cleaning glasses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's dedicated to her job. And I always look at the because again I've seen this scene a million times, the mismatched tables and chairs, like because they probably are like, we just pick them out of the trash because we know they're going to get trashed anyway. So
Right.
do they have like a whole back room full of like extra chairs and tables, and that they just say, all right, that's firewood, bring on some more stuff? I don't know.
Yeah, or like there's a property master, like a prop master who would just like cobbled these things together for the scene. And it was just like, you just need to get it there enough so that I can have, Steve throw somebody through it. That's the key. Just
I
give
like the table break tease where the one guy goes off the like balcony area.
Right.
And you think, okay, he's gonna go through the table. No, he goes right like next to the table. But then Dudikoff and the other guy come crashing through. Well, Dudikoff's stunt double comes crashing through. I think it was B.J. Davis, if I'm not mistaken,
Oh, maybe as his stunt double.
as his stunt double, and like he was probably the choreographer as well. Yeah, and they come through the table. So that's anytime you see a table break is a good time too.
Yeah. And one of my favorite, 80s, 90s action staples is when Poindexter comes out from behind the bar and he joins Steve James. Steve James, of course, is just crushed everybody. Poindexter really hasn't done much except for maybe hit somebody over the head with a bottle. Like he's not doing much. But one of the baddies kind of staggers up and they look at each other and what's coming. It's the double punch, right?
Yeah.
And one of my favorite techniques. I mean, anytime you have a buddy movie, there's a buddy cop movie or something like that. There's always that double punch. And even though this movie, you would have thought the double punch might have been with Dudikoff and Steve James, getting it here with Poindexter might have been even better.
It was. I think it was, and that kind of solidifies Charlie as the sidekick. He is a sidekick to both men.
Right. Yeah, it was perfect. And so we get that double punch, and I'm trying to think, I don't know if there's anything else in that fight with because Steve James is just so beautiful. I mean, his Marine uniform gets torn, so he's just got like the cuffs and his like big biceps and arm,
Well, yeah, and he's got the challenge with the bigger guy's got that like a table leg and he's like, okay, we're gonna do that. Oh no, hand to hand, and he just takes those two punches and does that laugh, and then he just backhands him and he knocks the guy right out. It is beautiful.
Yeah, I mean the Steve James, this is one of the best of any from canon, for me, with canon movies or just kind of the late 80s early 90s action stuff. I mean, you don't always get Steve James to be able to be this kind of Steve James, because a lot of times he's playing a more serious character, like Riverbend. He's a serious character for a lot of that, or Street Justice. Where here he gets to be this really, really fun, or Street Hunter. Sorry, Street Justice is the TV show. Street Hunter. Here he's just really yucking it up, and he's like, like, I'm ready to rock and roll. I'm ready, and like you said, like that guy's got the leg of the table. And he's like, oh, you want to try to hit me? And then he throws it. Oh, okay, hand to hand. That's fine with me. It's just, yeah. And even just like you said, the taking the punch and then like decking the guy and knocking him out. Yeah, it just was, it was pure fantastic Steve James. And again, this movie, you've seen so many bad movies go in a completely different direction and not do what we got here. And this movie giving us this scene is just so beautiful.
This may be canon's finest moment, these minutes that are at the Blind Beggar.
Yes, yeah. And so then what happens is that Tojo Ken shows up, and actually I forget to mention, you were right about BJ Davis. He was the second unit director. So yeah, so he was doing he was choreographing this beautiful scene that we like you said, one of the best here. He was putting this together for us. Now Tojo Ken shows up, and Dudikoff decides we need to get out of here.
Right.
And so
they've lost track of Alicia Sanborn.
That's right. The woman disappeared.
She got away because he intervened, but they didn't really get to find out what her deal was and why she believes that the lion is a bastard and all that. So
yeah. Yeah, she had escaped, so they were like, okay, let's get out of here. And Tojo Ken shows up, and I don't know if you ever played the video game Killer Instinct, but
I have not.
Okay, so Killer Instinct was like a fighting game that was sort of like, I guess, like after Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. I don't even know if it might have been from the makers of like Street Fighter or one of those, Mortal Kombat. But the idea was that the big thing about that game was it was combos. So you would like do a bunch of button pushes and it would create combos. What we discovered was you couldn't really play it one-on-one because it was too easy to break the combos. So you were just essentially waiting for somebody to try a combo and then you beat them, and it kind of just was no fun. So we just would play the computer. That's pretty much how it would work at the arcade.
Right.
But we were playing it all the time. We would go to this bowling alley in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Bowlorama, where you could still smoke in those places back then. So one of the change machines was turned into an ashtray because we were just these horrible ruffians who had no respect for anything. But we would put our quarters up and play Killer Instinct for a huge chunk of the night. And so when we saw this scene where Tojo Ken shows up and some random ruffian in the bar approaches him and he hits him with like an 8-hit combo to knock him out, which we were just loving that. Like, we're just like, because like when you would do the combo in Killer Instinct, it would tell you, they all had names. It was like a, King combo or Ultra combo or something like that. And so it was beautiful to just see that. It was like, again, it's just playing on our sensibilities there. But you usually don't see really long combos like that in a movie. It's usually like one person hits a couple times and then throws them aside. So to have a nice 8-hit combo like that, it showed us just how badass Tojo Ken was.
Yeah, like somebody, he just beats, he doesn't even know who the guy is. He just beats the crap out of him. somebody like,
Right.
hey, oh,
Yeah, and he just gets it. So they get outside, and Tojo Ken's got his crew with him, and Steve James is ready to get after it some more.
yep.
He wants to go, and our all-time favorite line in this movie for my friends and I comes at this point where he says, "I want fresh beat." We rewound that again. That was another piece of the where we just kept rewinding that over and over again just to see him say that again. I think we ruined the poor tape for anybody else who wanted to watch American Ninja 2 because we did that. But one of my all-time favorite lines.
And I think he calls him One Eye as they're
Yes,
driving away. And in the car, we should mention, has been like stripped or in the process of being stripped.
right,
This is
right.
apparently a rough part of town, and
Yes. That's right. It's almost like it's almost like an old Star Wars thing, right? Where like the Jawas are taking something
yeah,
apart. It's
yep,
like Luke comes out to find the Jawas taking something apart. It's essentially what it is. It's like the street ruffians are taking apart the car that they drove to this event in, which is kind of a funny thing too, because when they go back to the governor's mansion to pick everybody up, and the
yes,
car's apart, like Wild Bill is like, what the hell is going on here? But it's almost like he's like, what the hell is going on here? Like they did that to the car, as opposed to they found the car like that.
right. And I love that scene because I love the music because
Yes.
they slow it all down. Like you had the boom, 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 dong. I freaking love. From like the minute they get to the party until they get out of that. Like I've watched that so many times. It's
Yes.
beautiful. Everything
Yeah.
about it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's one of the best scenes ever. Well, yeah, what we'll do here, we'll take a break here, and then when we come back, we'll finish off. We'll finish off American Ninja 2. So we'll be right back. It's the early 90s in LA. The war on drugs is raging, and Detective John Bainbridge is the LAPD's secret weapon against crime. Former special forces in Nam, he's a cop on the edge. When he and his partner Geary uncover a potential human trafficking ring, it doesn't take long before John Bainbridge realizes this thing goes all the way to the top, which doesn't scare him. That just means they'll fall that much harder when he takes them down. Part send-up and part love letter to early 90s action films, Bainbridge will take you back to the golden days of Canon, PM Entertainment, and AIP. You can get it in paperback or on Kindle and Kindle Unlimited from Amazon. Follow the link in the podcast description. My newest novel, Don's House in the Mountains, is available now. It follows Don Veazey, who after 20 years has finally made it as a writer, going from an AP English teacher to richer and more famous than he ever could have imagined. In the process, his wife Lois, feeling alienated and resentful of her husband's success, has filed for divorce, forcing Don to move to a house in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. With time alone to reflect, he's able to see how his new wealth and fame has affected his life in ways he never expected. Maybe the biggest of these is his new house, which is bigger and nicer than anything he's ever had in his entire life, but the longer he lives there, the more he gets the sense that it might have magical powers. But that can't be right. A house can't have magical powers, can it? Pick up Don's House in the Mountains today. You can find it at Amazon in paperback and in Kindle. All right, we are back. So yeah, so we've just we've gotten back to the governor's mansion after the big fight scene. We talk about one of the best fight scenes ever, and Michael Dudikoff is hiding in the car because I
Again, Inspector Singh is looking for him.
yes, exactly.
Where's Armstrong?
Right. We lost him, sir. We don't know. Yeah, I mean the Steve James subterfuge is fantastic in this, and of course Wild Bill knows exactly what's going on. But the funny thing is that Len Sparrowhawk almost
He gives it
gives up.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Which you just Len Sparrowhawk. He just what why eventually he comes around, right? Eventually they win him over. But the fact that he would want to get poor Joe Armstrong in trouble with Inspector Singh.
He's got no love for the army. He's a Marine.
That's right. Yeah, the cipher clerks. He's good. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So they go back to the Wild Bill's office, and Wild Bill's like, okay, what are we going to do next? This is where we've got sort of Chekhov's street urchin kid who knows everything in town. Because I forgot that when we first get Armstrong and Jackson to Wild Bill's the headquarters there. We're introduced to Toto again.
Yeah, Charlie introduces him. Yeah.
Yeah, and explains this is the kid who knows everything. So of course Dudikoff, again, Chekhov's kid who knows everything. Well, he's going to be the one who finds Alicia Sanborn for us. So he goes with that route. And Steve James is like, okay, maybe we need to do a recon mission on Blackbeard Island, because that's where all this bad stuff is going down, is Blackbeard Island.
Right, but too much. You can't just do that. Inspector Singh's like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You are visitors here in this country. I will remind you.
Right. Yes.
No trespassing on private property.
Exactly. So yeah. So Steve James is thinking like maybe we could do. It's funny because at this point, Wild Bill is kind of okay with the idea of doing the recon mission, but first, like, let's see what Dudikoff does. Later, Wild Bill's like, well, no, I need to get permission from the ambassador to go to Wild, and at that point, Steve James is like, forget it, we're just going.
He keeps doing rah meetings every time we go back to them, until he finally wins them all over, and they just like, yeah, screw it, we're going.
Exactly.
It's assault on Blackbeard Island.
Yes, which is like the perfect way to end a movie like this, is to have that. But before that, Dudikoff finds Alicia Sanborn. She greets him at the door with a shotgun, which is great way for a woman to.
Her home is brought to you by Castrol GTX, engineered for today's smaller cars.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you gotta love that product placement when and again, this movie doesn't have a lot of it, but when it does, when it's got it, it's got it.
It sure does.
So he talks to Alicia, says, hey, listen, I'm the good guy here. I'm here to help you. We need to find out what's going on that island. I think he's asking, can you get me on the island, right? And she's like, well, I know somebody who has a boat that can get us there. Okay, well, let's go do that. But then of course they're waylaid by ninjas again. So now we're starting to get some thick, hot and heavy ninja action in this movie.
Yeah, you got the ninja, like, yeah. Doesn't the one have the little smoke bomb gimmick? They're just out there. They're in full ninja mode here. Right. But of course, I think obviously the highlight is the guy once they get into the truck. and we've got Alicia, we got Toto, we got Joe, and the ninja jumps onto it, and then he's dragging behind.
Yes, the old grappling hook, right? That grappling hook can hook onto anything, and get the kind of torque or the kind of tension needed to latch onto anything and be stuck. I mean, the way you can scale walls with it, the way you can hook onto the back of pickup trucks, that invention for an action movie. I mean, other than maybe like computers that can like find information about anything with a few taps of a button, I don't know if there's anything that's more magic than the grappling hook.
Yeah, it always hits its mark. Yes. I guarantee you, if I went and tried to grapple hook anything, it would probably come back and hit me in the head, and I'd be in the hospital.
Yes, well, especially a moving truck, right? Like that. Would
right.
Like,
oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I was going to start with a still,
right.
Something standing still. Like I'll try to hook up to that tree branch up there.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly. Nope. Hit me in the head, hit me in the balls. It'd be something horrible.
Right, exactly. Well, that's the thing. You got to watch your eyes when that grappling hook comes down, because I might not be able to get it to latch onto the corner of a castle or a stationary building, but knowing my luck, it would catch me in the eye. That the hook part would get me in the eye. That's where it would catch on to.
That ain't good.
Exactly. But yeah, this ninja he latches on. He's essentially dragging behind, and it's a long period of time where he's dragging behind. It's like the Fast Five,
runway
bank vaults, right? It's like,
and it has an explosive ending too, which is always welcome in an action movie.
Well, exactly, because they keep spinning around with him, and like he finds ways to get himself like onto the back of the truck, and Dudikoff has to punch him off. He gets under the hood and he smashes the window or the windshield, or all that kind of stuff. He kind of just is able to do all kinds of stuff to really make things difficult. And at some point, Dudikoff's like, "We're not going to be able to get rid of this ninja unless we need to abandon the car."
Yeah, abandon ship.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, that is the beauty of this movie with Dudikoff fighting the ninjas, is he's seen all these tricks before. He knows what this ninja is trying to do. He knows that pretty much any counter that Dudikoff tries to do, whether it's like, driving in a weird pattern or, skidding off in the distance or any of those kinds of moves, it's not going to work on this ninja. The only thing to do is to let the car go, and hopefully it'll drive its way into some oil drums filled with gas somewhere.
Right. Yeah, I mean, John Fujioka was one hell of a teacher, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
because he left no stone unturned. He taught him how to do everything.
Yeah. And of course, we do get a scene, we get a flashback scene of John
He gets
Fujioka. Yeah, he's got the fingers of like a 15-year offensive line vet in the National Football League. Like he just looks like Anthony Munoz, like his fingers are, but I guess if you were a jujitsu master and you're like pulling people by the gi, you probably would get those kind of gnarled fingers as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. But yeah, so once the car blows up, Toto's like, well, what are we, Mike Dudikov's like, yeah, go back to the to the station and tell Jackson that we're going to be going to the island. And then Alicia says, well, we can't go to the island now. Or is it Alicia who says we? I think it's Dudikov says we got to wait till it's dark.
Yeah, I think she mentions it because they'll obviously see them coming if they just show up there in the middle of the day. So
Right.
it gives them a chance to have a little tender where she mentions like what's happened with her father because her mother died from cancer, and then the father became like, all right, I'm gonna devote the rest of my life to curing cancer, and he came very close. The governments were involved, and for whatever the probably big pharma got involved and said, nope, what are you guys close to doing? Cut that shit out. We're not allowing that. But old drug dealer man, Leo the Lion's like, I'll give you some money. And he didn't think anything of it because he had the tunnel vision. He was going to find the cure for cancer. And then he ends up in cahoots with drug dealers.
Right. I almost think they were implying that the lion is the one who scuttled the cure for cancer. That like he paid off the English, the U.S. and American and the British governments.
That could be too.
That's how evil this guy is that we could have had a cure for cancer, and this evil drug dealer guy, paid off American and UK interests so that they wouldn't fund it anymore.
Yeah, I don't think Big Pharma had its reputation in 1980s quite as they do now.
Exactly. That's what you probably would have had now, right? Is that he would have been Gary Conway would have been representing Big Pharma. Yeah. I mean, Gary Conway definitely has like some kind of low rent Richard Lynch vibes in this.
Yeah, he's like too tall as well. He's a real awkward villain. It's like you definitely know like he wrote this. Like I'm gonna write it. I'll punch it up for you, Menachem. Okay, but I want to be Leo the Lion. Okay.
Right, exactly. Well, and it shows you how good this movie is that you can have such a low rent baddie as Conway inhabiting this like
because normally the villain makes or breaks a movie.
Yeah.
But it's so good. It's like you can have. I mean, having Tojo Ken helps obviously as being the actual muscle.
Yes,
and obviously having an army of ninjas at your disposal is always a good thing as well. So.
Exactly. Which we discover just how many ninjas they have at their disposal because speaking of Tojo Ken, while our hero is lazing on the beach with his new lady friend before they go and storm the island, and then also like you said, while Curtis Jackson every so often has a rah-rah speech about how we need to go storm this place, and while Bill's like no we gotta wait till we're from the that could be forever before by the time this is all about red tape and stuff like that. While those two things are happening. Meanwhile, on Blackbeard Island, Gary Conway has the governor, Inspector Singh, and they're doing a demonstration, and it's supposed to be, I thought, of how great the ninjas are, except Tojo Ken just wipes them all out.
Yeah, doesn't make sense. And it's just an awkward way to hold the meeting. They're all facing in the same direction, and he's like giving this, we started down and dirty on the streets.
Right.
And then we got to the jungles, and how can we protect our interests? I have the solution. Yeah, it's a very awkwardly staged scene, and that damn governor there. I love the governor's reaction when the car pulls up when they come back. I will always like take a picture of my TV and just send that to someone with no context.
Right.
Because he just has the best facial reaction. So it'd be like, here you go. I'm watching American Ninja 2. That's all you know. Right. It's kind of, I do the same with Death Wish 2, where his daughter jumps and is impaled on the fence. I always take a picture of her just hanging on the fence and send it to someone.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's funny because that scene, the
I'll try
impaling.
to. I'll remember it next time when I'm watching. I'll send it to you. I'll
Yes,
DM. I'll
yeah,
DM you an impaled Kersey daughter.
that would be. Because the thing with that scene is that it's supposed to. I've always wondered about that scene. Actually, is it supposed to be like very serious, or do they know how much like it's Death Wish 2? I guess I don't know.
I think it was meant to be serious, but
Yeah,
yeah, I find humor and I'd probably going to hell, but I was probably going there anyway. So it's
right. Yeah, I mean, some of these movies just have these things in them where you're just like, I can't not laugh at that. It's
fine.
like um, yeah,
I
and
mean,
like,
that scene in Death Wish 2 is even worse because she just got like raped again for the second time, and it's just like
right,
I shouldn't be laughing, but maybe I'm like, you know what, good for her. She's at least she can't get raped anymore. For God's sake.
exactly.
Poor
Yeah,
girl.
that was the one thing about canned movies that I think this movie does better. There's a couple instances maybe, and then I'm going to bring up in a little bit of some dark, like putting people through the ringer kind of things. But some of those movies, like whether it's the Shokazuki Ninja ones where like his wife gets murdered and then one of his kids get killed and another one gets kidnapped, and it's just like or like Paul Kersey, they just keep. If you're related to Paul Kersey,
Yeah.
you're gonna get like the worst stuff to happen to you. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
these can't and, like at least with PM Entertainment, it felt like with PM Entertainment, when they were gonna do something horrible to the hero, it was like they just did one and that's it. It's like you get one time. That's it. Okay. Gary Daniels, Recoil, we're killing your family. We're pushing them off the cliff. That's it. That's the one, and that's it. We're not hurting any. Oh, actually, no, because they kill the best friend too. So I guess they
That's
kind of,
right.
yeah,
That's
that's a good
right.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, zero tolerance at least, right? You know, uh, uh, Robert Patrick, your family gets murdered. That's it. Now you just go and kill, Mick Fleetwood and Miles O'Keefe and whoever else, the guy from Bosch. Yeah,
Yeah. Rastafari Ali too. He's in there.
right. That's right. Exactly. Yeah, it is amazing. Like, yeah, like heroes get put through quite a bit. That's I guess another area where this movie I think does well. It doesn't, nobody really gets put through the ringer to that extent. There isn't that kind of thing here. There's almost like no damsel in distress element for the most part. Yeah, nobody's being sexually assaulted. Nobody's being tortured.
Yeah, this is a canon movie that I'd watch with my mom in
Yeah,
the room.
exactly.
Like I'm not going to watch a Death Wish with my mom in the room. It's just
Right,
awkward, and I don't want it. I don't want to.
right.
But yeah, I could throw on an American Ninja all the time.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Chuck Norris is good for that too. He doesn't really have any of that, the rape and all that in his movie. So those but yeah, Death Wish, I have to watch those at home.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, Invasion USA, right? The worst that happens is the poor family trimming the Christmas tree gets the
That's
rocket launcher blowing up their
that's hilarious.
house. Yeah, it's one of the greatest things. I mean, again, Canon knows how to start a movie. They know how to get you in. They don't mess around yeah, just like kind of with this movie where they just kind of here you go. Here's a fight scene. Here's move to the city, and then here's Dudikoff fighting ninjas on a beach. Yeah, so yeah, for sure. Now, so we're at the point now where we're storming the beach, where Dudikoff and Alicia are storming the beach. We've just had our presentation, which ended in Tojo Ken killing all the ninjas that are on, or I guess most of not all the ninjas. There's still plenty of other people, other guys in ninja costumes standing at attention, watching the other ninjas get killed. So I guess there's still plenty of ninjas there available. But they've also kind of made it clear that like not only are they cloning these ninjas, but the Professor Sanborn, he is making these ninjas enhanced. And I guess they never get to the point where they actually have to face the enhanced ninjas. At least if they do, Dudikoff's able to take care of them pretty easily. But I don't think
Right.
they ever
Yeah, I think
fought.
they're in those containers, the test tubes or whatever
That's
they're in there.
right. That's right. They kind of stole them from the set of
They're
the
still
Scorpions.
incubating.
Right, exactly. Where the Scorpions rock you like a hurricane set. They're yeah, getting ready to open up and start singing. Yeah, but yeah, so at the same time that Dudikoff starts to storm the island with Alicia, Curtis Jackson decides, you know what, I can't take it anymore. I'm ready to boogie. I think those were his exact words.
I think it was indeed, yes.
Yeah, right to boogie. And of course, our faithful sidekick, Larry Poindexter, as Charlie, he's with him, right? Because at first when he stands up, there's kind of a question of like, well, who's going to go with Jackson? Because he's the Army guy, right? The rest of them are Marines. Are they going to follow Wild Bill, their commanding officer's lead, or are they going to follow with Jackson? Well, Charlie lets them know, hey, I'm with Jackson here. And once he's in, they're all in, including even Len Sparrowhawk is in. They're just all ready to go storm the island.
He got him fired up. He's got him good. Motivational speaker, Curtis Jackson.
Yes, exactly.
Which is probably what made him a great candidate in Avenging Force to run for Senate.
Yes, that's a good point.
You can convince the constituents to follow you, and that's what you need to do.
I would have voted for him. I would have,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, even in Riverbend, whereas me being a Caucasian persuasion, I would have been rounded up with the rest of the whites in the town and put in like I still would have been like, hey, I'm good with right. Steve James being my leader. Yeah, so I would have followed him anywhere. I would have run through a brick wall for him. So I totally get where Larry Poindexter and the rest of the Marines were coming from when they were like, yeah, we're with you. We don't really know how far it is to Blackbeard Island, but we just know they're headed there at this point. Mm-hmm. And then Dudikoff, he and Alicia, I guess I didn't realize this, but he has he brought some garden shears with her. He brought like a knife that I guess he could use as like a clipping tool to cut through the chain link fence, which I guess when you have your base of operations on an island, you probably think you don't need much more than a chain link fence.
Exactly.
Yeah. So unfortunately, the chain link fence didn't do much to keep Dudikoff and Alicia Sanborn out. So they get through and they manage to waylay a couple ninjas and get themselves dressed up like ninjas. So now, of course,
classic.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the problems with Conaway's operation is he has so many ninjas that it's really hard. Yeah. I mean, beyond the fact that, I mean, from a payroll standpoint, and I guess when you're in a Caribbean island, you don't have to worry about like W-2s and things like that. Like you just, benefits,
Well,
like,
are they clones too? Are they even real people?
Well, that's a good point too, right? You clone them, you don't have to worry.
They just have to probably feed them like baby food, like RoboCop or something, just to keep their organs moving, or I don't know.
Or yeah, how did they do it in the Star Wars Attack of the Clones? Because I mean, the scene where Tojo Ken is killing the ninjas, that would have been like if Obi-Wan's visiting, the El Camino planet, and Jango Fett just kills a bunch of the clones and just like watches them like blasting them away or something like that. That's essentially what that scene was. But yeah, I didn't think about that. That makes sense that because they're clones, they're just kind of everywhere. But it also means it's very easy to pretend to be one because how can you keep track? And somehow as the two ninjas, they end up like in like very high level areas where like the professor is showing them where the clones are. They're in this big lab area where it seems like only like official personnel are there, but Dudikoff and Alicia are there as well. And they're ninja. It's like nobody's like, hey, why are these two ninjas in here? Shouldn't they be out like doing guarding something or attacking something that they want?
Yeah, especially if they are clones. It's like, what do they care? They
exactly.
They don't need to know about this operation and how they were made. Just go do it.
Exactly. But
and at least that presentation makes more sense, unlike Leo the Lion, who just stupid. But yeah, Professor, it was like, okay, I'm going to turn it over to the professor now to give you the technical jargon.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the whole thing, I think, when you think of like going to like work conferences and stuff like that, like the way Gary handled this one, I think, if you were somebody who had to go to this, you would have been a little disappointed, like you're like, I'm waiting for the free dinner afterwards.
Right.
When's the happy hour, right?
Weren't we supposed to get lunch with this? What's going on?
Yeah. So at this point, now that Dudikoff and Alicia are kind of making their way through the thing that they find her dad. Because the dad has a bit of a fainting spell or something. He has something wrong with him, and
it seems like they must be drugging him to kind of keep him under their thumb a bit. I would think. Yeah, that's what I took from it.
Yeah, so that's kind of as he's giving his speech. Suddenly he has to stop, and then he gets taken away by some of the ninjas, and that's when Dudikoff and Alicia free him from that. And so then they're kind of walking. And so then I guess the plan is that Dudikoff was going to get her, they were going to separate and she was going to get him out of there. And he was going to go confront Tojo Ken, kind of finish that one off. But then the dad decides, Professor Sanborn says, no, I've got one last thing I've got to take care of, which is interesting, right? Because that obviates the need for a Gary Conway confrontation at the end, which is a very interesting way that they decided to handle that.
Yeah, he has to destroy his creation, his evil creation.
Yeah. Yes, we get the
And
Frankenstein's monster.
he's going to be the martyr in this situation.
Yes. What's great about it is that for a lab that is doing all of this kind of really, extensive work and cloning and things like that, the fact that they've got explosive charges just hanging around, and you can just attach them to what he was able to find 5 of them pretty easily to attach to each of the capsules that had a clone in it, and they were all wired together very easily as well. It was you'd think that they, I guess maybe when you're doing bad evil stuff, right? You've got all kinds of explosives and weaponry hanging around, and maybe the professor just knew, like, oh, I'll just go to the armory and get myself some bombs and attach them to the.
He could have just got barrels. They blow up if you drive through them. So
right, exactly. Yeah, I do wonder, maybe that's the thing, right? Conway's like, well, we're not keeping any barrels on this place because we know those blow up, and I don't want to risk anything. But you never know, we're going to need to like wire a car bomb or something like that. So let's just keep a whole bunch of those on hand just in case we need to, like if that governor ever starts to give us a hard time, right? Or the inspector, wire his car and he'll blow up, kind of casino style or something like that. Will be. Also, which actually, I guess is before casino, so it wasn't the casino style, but
casinos, yeah, they would have stolen it from here.
right, exactly. Yeah. So now we get Jackson. His fights here, they're good, but they're not as good as the bar fights.
Right.
We kind of got our best stuff out of the way. I think that my friends and I remember we were a little disappointed. We were hoping for some, because we were like, okay, now he's here. He's got his shirt off. He's got a bandana.
He had a sword.
He's got these 2 big knives, or knives.
Right.
It seemed like there was going to be a really big payoff here, and it kind of was a little bit of a letdown. He had some good fights. He had some good stuff. There's one where he crushes a guy's larynx, and the guy gets up after having his larynx. We can hear the crunching of the larynx as he's stepping on his throat. And then he gets back in and goes, "Stay down." And the guy just gets back down, which, I would have been pretending to be dead and hoping I could get to the hospital in time to repair my larynx before I, have trouble breathing or whatever. But that's like probably the closest thing we get to a good fight with Jackson in this scene.
Again, though, if you're taking a step down from the blind beggar bar fight, you're still doing pretty good. But
yeah,
nothing's going to compare to that fight.
Yeah,
that was perfection.
Yeah, I think it's when you watch this the first time, you're thinking they're going to keep building on it. Kind of, you think of like like PM, how it's like each one's bigger than the one before it. This doesn't quite do that. They almost kind of they give Jackson a step back because they want Dudikoff maybe to have the big
this
fight.
Is Dudikoff. Yeah, this is this is the main event. This is Tojo Ken versus Joe Armstrong. But again, that's where the limitations of Dudikoff come in. Even though they obviously have him under the hood for most of it. It's not pure martial artist versus pure martial artist, which you could have magic when that happens.
Yeah, exactly. And Jackson, Steve James with Tojo Ken would have been, with Mike Stone, that would have been pretty fantastic. What we get in this end fight scene is, it's really, it's interesting because it's like, we get Dudikoff and Mike Stone. They're kind of sitting, in the lotus position across each other, and they're doing their kind of their hand gesture kind of things. And then the way we know that Tojo Ken is a baddie is he doesn't even let Dudikoff finish his hand stuff before he attacks him. So he has no honor at all.
Right. Well, and he definitely has no honor when he goes to a gun not too long later.
Right. Which is great because as a ninja, he's adept at all of these weapons except for a shotgun because he cannot seem to hit Dudikoff, who's right in front of him.
No. Snake Eyes would be very disappointed.
Yeah, exactly.
Snake Eyes knew how to handle a gun and all his ninja stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Get it together, Tojo.
No, and I think it's a lot of arrogance on Tojo's part to be like, well, I can use, I can use any kind of weapon, so of course I can use a shotgun. And it's like, well, if you've never shot one before, Tojo, you're gonna have trouble, man. He looked like he'd never shot one before. The way he was like just kind of firing, and Dudikoff's like jumping all over the place, dodging it.
Yeah, he should have thrown a barrel at him.
Right, exactly. Which would have.
But again, they were banned from the island. So.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that was a smart move, right, to prevent the explosion. But again, it didn't work. Keeping car bombs, whatever those things were that the professor attached to the capsules to blow those up, ended up being just as bad as the barrels. So yeah, one or the other. Yeah. the other thing about this fight scene, right, is it's very heavy in gymnastics. There's a lot of flipping, tumbling, that kind of thing.
And they're like, what is on like wood chips or something all over the. What the hell was that? Like mulch.
Right.
Who mulched the arena floor there? It was like, it looked like it was like a community college or something. They were filming that in. I don't know.
Right. Well, because the mulch, you think like was that like was a circus in town or something?
Right.
Like,
The rodeo or something. What was
right.
going on?
Yeah, because like, it looked like it could have been a space for something like that with the kind of the
A
where
livestock auction.
right, exactly. Yes. Yeah. And you know, I mean that would be funny. I never I know there's the kind of the book the guide to the Sam Furstenberg movies. I should have read up on this to see if maybe like that's actually was the case. Like
I don't remember if they ever said it. I mean, I have, yeah, again, I always should consult those books, but you know what? I just like watching and winging it.
yeah, it's funnier to imagine Dudikoff like or the extra that was doing the gymnastics, doing a tumble and landing in like cow dung or something like that, and having to like wipe it off their gi or something.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah,
Nice outtake.
right, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, really, Tojo Ken is really no match for Dudikoff. I mean, they kind of go back and forth. They've got some good, like sword fighting and some some other stuff in here. I mean, there's some moments in here where you think Tojo Ken might cause some problems, but all bets are off when he pulls the shotgun and he can't hit Dudikoff right in front of him. It's over at that point. It's just a matter of time.
As if we ever had any doubt anyway. But yeah, you like to at least kind of be able to trick your brain into thinking like, oh, the good guy might not win this action movie.
Right.
Maybe not. Nah.
Or at least like he's got to figure something out, right? Can he figure out a way
you got to keep throwing obstacles and hurdles in front of him.
Yeah. But again, it's that idea that Dudikoff as the ninja has seen it all before. And so he just knows, even with Tojo Ken doesn't have anything in his ninja repertoire that he could throw at Dudikoff that Dudikoff hasn't seen before.
Right. I wonder if Franco Nero could have tripped up Dudikoff.
Yeah, or Sho Kazugi.
That is the thing we show, like an American Ninja movie with Sho Kazugi in it. That would have been the ultimate dream.
Yeah. It's a shame because it's like, you see with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where Kevin Feige, had this idea where he's like, hey, we've got the rights to all these Marvel characters. We could team them up and create an Avengers thing. And suddenly everybody's doing universes now.
Right.
Canon could have had its own combined universe.
I've thought about this many a time.
Yeah.
I've also thought about Canon should have had Lego sets. And let me tell you, I would have been a very poor man because I'd be building the Blind Beggar bar right now, the apartment building from Death Wish 3. I would have probably the prisoner of war camp from Missing in Action. Yeah. I'd have all these things.
Yeah. I mean, the Blind Beggar bar, right? You'd have to have like the breakaway railing that people can be thrown through.
A window for a spear to go through.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. The little Lego Taylor or Lego Tommy, right? That he like
the bartender lady with the glass in one hand and a towel in the other.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You're right about that. I mean, for and I don't know if there's like an alternative to Lego out there that like could make these kinds of things, that like you could, we think of like Vinegar Syndrome being like putting out like the Blu-rays of all these movies, but like, is there like and I know like there's like, action figures, right, that are, sort of independent ones, right, that aren't like, Mattel or whatever. If there's like a Lego, like another version of Lego that could make these. Yeah.
Yeah. Or you just have to be real good at customs on those. And that's like if I ever won the lottery and like a lot of money and I just had nothing but time, I'd just be like ordering and I'd probably hire a Lego expert because I know they're out there. Yeah. And like, you got to build me Canon World.
Right. That would be absolutely. I mean, and maybe even like talk to Fox, right, and have them like fund it as a reality show.
Yeah, there is that like Lego competition show. They'll make it Canon themed one season. Like you build the Miracles community center from Breaking 2 Electric Boogaloo right now.
Yes.
That's your job.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some others that I.
The fish canning factory from Death Wish 4. I need that.
Yes.
Have Gene LaBelle at the door watching it.
Yes. Yeah. Oh man. Now that you're talking about this, I'm like, oh, what are some of the other candidates that I would want to see?
The shopping mall from Invasion USA.
Yes, of course. Yes. Yeah. I'm thinking Cyborg. I mean, I don't know if like would you have like the Van Damme on a cross?
Yeah,
Crucified Van Damme.
with the ship and the sand.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I mean, and I guess like you maybe you do like a Superman
The
or a Masters
Bloodsport, the Kumite,
Oh.
the whole thing, the whole arena.
Oh, the Kumite. You could also do like the Mentos like foot chase scene, right? With the boats and like have them bouncing along the boats.
How about Robbie's ribs from Masters of the Universe?
Oh yes. With a James Tolkien.
The music store.
Yes. Oh yes. Yeah. Yeah, that would be. Yeah, I mean, even just the set, like the
obviously
with the Frank Langella. Yeah, that would be, yeah, man. Yeah, there's so many. I don't. You could do a Superman versus Atomic Man.
Nuclear Man.
Nuclear Man, right? Sorry, Nuclear Man. Yeah.
Get it right, by God. Yeah, the moon with that obviously just was covered in some kind of fabric and it moved as they did. It was
right, exactly. Yes.
Just put a gray tarp on that stage and it'll paint it like the moon.
Yeah, I never, the thing is that like for people our age out there, we have a little bit more disposable income to buy this kind of stuff now, that like you could make this. I mean, when I go online, I see a lot of people spending a lot of money on physical media, like, this new Blu-ray, if this came out or whatever.
Don't insult me. Don't call me out on this show.
No, I'm saying like the money's there, right? Like the people are spending the money. It's like there's a market for Canon Lego. Amongst our fandom.
Let me tell you again. We have Chris DiPetrillo on our staff who works for Figures Toy Company. I harass him on every episode that he's on. Like, is this the episode you're going to announce the Michael Dudikoff figure? No, I'm afraid not. Then I'm like, why do I keep bringing you on this show? What's the point?
Right, exactly.
You have a toy company at your disposal. Make it, convince the people that we want this. Have it like a crowd. I should check with him, like if he could do crowdfunding. Like if enough people, like how much does it cost? If enough people say, all right, and obviously you got to get Dudikoff's permission. You can't just be making Dudikoff figures.
Right.
And maybe Dudikoff isn't the one you start with because you got to get that hair perfect.
Yes.
So maybe start with somebody simpler. I don't know who. Tojo Ken. I don't think there's a big market for him, but yeah, we'll have to.
Bronson, right? Like I imagine his estate would be in favor of the money that they could make from.
Right? Why not?
Yeah. And so you've got the Bronson, like the different Bronsons you could do too. You could do one for each movie. Like you could do a 5 where he has a remote control soccer ball.
He has to.
Yeah. I mean, the stuff that what was it? Murphy's Law, right? Where he's got the woman who's in Roadhouse.
Snot licking donkey fart.
Exactly. I think that was when my friends and I learned the term butt crust. When she called somebody butt crust. I mean, if you could like have it where you pull a switch with her and she just says the
she's
different
got
line.
to. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's from an action figure standpoint. I mean, just think, like I've got like, bobbleheads from, going to minor league sporting events where they give, or other professional sporting events where they give out bobbleheads. I've got like the minor league team in Wilmington, Delaware. They have a guy in a celery costume who runs around whenever they score a run, and so I've got a couple of his bobbleheads that the Mr. Celery Man or Mr. Celery bobbleheads. To mix in some like a Steve James, from American Ninja 2 in amongst a Mr. Celery Man bobblehead would look perfect as I'm, working for my home office, and seeing them kind of sitting there on the shelf.
I've been trying to there's definitely a market for this stuff. Just being a big wrestling fan, there's so many, like you mentioned, there's all these like independent ones that are signing up these legends and they're making figures of them.
Yeah.
And who the hell would you think needed a figure of President Jack Tunney? But you know what? There's one. There's one out there now.
Yeah. Yeah, 'cause you know what it is, I think, for the wrestling thing is that, like, you know, it kind of the more obscure or, like, kind of the ones that, from, because you think of, like, watching, like, on the weekends or something like that, where you'd have, like, kind of a lower undercard or, like, the local guys that, like, in the Boston area, we had this guy, the Duke of Dorchester, who
Oh, Pete Doherty, yeah.
or yeah, and he would bite and stuff. And I remember when I saw wrestling in Portland, Maine, at the Civic Center, there was flurries on the ground. So some of the guys that because the way it would work is you do the Boston show, and then some of the Boston guys would break off to do the Portland one. And because there was flurries, I think it was Mr. Perfect was like, I'm not going to Portland. I'm like, I'm not making the trip. It's snowing. So we got the Duke of Dorchester fighting Hacksaw Jim Duggan. And I mean, if there was a Duke of Dorchester figure, right? Like I think in the Boston area for, people of a certain age, they would buy that one up. They just,
Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah. And I think these action movies, I think as more and more of us are, I mean, again, American Ninja 2, I mean, I would imagine most people that are listening to us talk about this have seen it and love it and, or just want to hear what we have to say about it, right? Just want to talk about it. But, every once in a while I'll see, like, there'll be younger people that listen, who, would have been born after this, this movie was made, who it's like, hopefully they hear this and go, oh, I'm going to go on Tubi and watch American Ninja
Right.
2.
Yeah.
And as we build that sort of that audience there, I mean, I think there's enough of an audience of people that grew up in that time window that would want a Michael Dudikoff, Joe Armstrong action figure.
And now when you think about it, who owns all these movies?
Yeah.
Amazon. I
Yeah.
think they have the money to invest. I think they have the money. They definitely have the infrastructure to get this to you. Because sometimes that's the worst part is the shipping.
Right.
Like what? Especially as some of these custom wrestling figures are being made over in the UK. So just getting it shipped over is the price of, yeah. So that's why I don't even look at it. I'm like, no, I'm not going down. I have my Mattels. I have my old LJNs and my Hasbros.
Yeah.
I'm not getting involved. I can only do so much.
Yeah. Yeah. The LJNs in particular, I remember, because I remember LJN would also make video games that were like the worst video games ever of like all those properties. But
Yeah.
it was like the action figures would bring you, at least for me, it would bring me in. It was like, oh, I've got the LJN action figures. Well, I'm at the video store. There's, the new X-Men game or something like that from LJN. Or what was it? They did Friday the 13th, I think, didn't they?
Yeah, wasn't it? Well, LJN owned Acclaim, wasn't that what it?
Yeah.
Weren't they together? Yeah.
Yeah, they did so many of those like properties for video games, and they were just like a lot of times they were the worst video games ever. But like their action figures, like their toys were so great that it was like, I just kept getting suckered in. I was like, well, the Spider-Man one's got to be good, and it's like, it's like
Nope.
But you're right. Like Amazon, I mean, Amazon's whole model is based on the fact that they pay so much or they get so much money from web hosting that they can afford to do Prime, free 2-day Prime for everybody and run all their competitors out of business because, Best Buy doesn't have free web hosting. They're not like
Right.
getting money from Netflix to host, all that kind of stuff. So you're right. They have the ability to do the shipping. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, we're probably not at a point now with 3D printers where you could do on-demand action figures, but that would probably be the thing for Amazon, right?
Yeah.
They, the way they do on-demand everything else, they would want to be able to do, you just pick out Joe Armstrong and they make it there on the spot for you and send it to you.
We're solving the world's problems right here on your show, or if we're creating monetary problems for fans like us, because
Exactly.
this could be very dangerous if what we're saying, if we're speaking this into existence.
Right, exactly. If anybody,
I might need a second job. I don't.
Right, yes. Yeah, I've always joked. I live near where the Phillies play, and I've thought about it. It's like, oh, I could maybe work like because I'd be able to go to baseball games as be like an usher or something. But it's like no, because even though the game starts at 7, you've got to be there, in the afternoon, and it's like I still have a full-time job that I've got to be at till like 5 or 6 p.m. So it's like, but there was a part of me that was like, oh, maybe I could do it, and I get paid, so I get extra money, and then also, it's like, no, I can't, I can't,
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine like telling my job, like, like, hey, Matt, can you go, look this thing up for me? I would, but I'm sorry, there's something wrong with my computer. It seems to happen every time the Phillies have a homestand that you have a problem with your computer. I don't know how that is. That's so weird. Oh, I'm going to need the day off tomorrow because it's a day game. I mean, I need the day off tomorrow because my family's in town.
Right.
Like, But yeah, I've thought, that might be what tips it, where like suddenly I'm like, yeah, bringing the beer up through I don't know if I could do the beer through the stands thing. I watched the guys do that. I think I would trip and just have a
Yeah,
face full of Miller Lite.
it's a skill. It's a
Yeah.
skill.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Now, with American Ninja 2, we're pretty much there at this point, right? The one last thing we have is the end party scene. That's really where we wrap this thing up. Where, yeah, they actually get offered a chance to be Marines, which I didn't. Is that how that works?
Well, Wild Bill could pull some strings if they wanted.
Yeah, I mean, and again, for us watching this movie, right? It's the same thing again, going back to Patrick Swayze throwing keys to a homeless guy. It's the same idea. Like, why can't they just be Marines? Hey, I
Right.
mean,
They're all working for the same overall corporation. I'm just
exactly.
transferring. Like
Yeah,
Paul Kersey transferred from the New York office to the Chicago office to the LA office. Like
right.
it's all one corporation. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, but they think of, our guys turn that down. They decide, you know what? No, we've got other stuff we got to do. We as Army
Yeah,
Rangers.
it looks like Duty's planning on getting some action, is what it looked like
Yes.
to me. I got
Yeah.
other plans, and I made her change her hairstyle
Right. Exactly.
because I didn't like it.
I didn't like it all frizzy. Right. There's something very Miami Vice female guest star about her. The character's name is Michelle, or the actress is Michelle Boats, but the Alicia Sanborn, the whole thing is very like, I was almost waiting for a scene where like she's just sort of talking to him. There's like kind of a slow Depeche Mode, or like maybe even Simply Red song playing in the background while they're
She
that would
falls
probably
in love with Tubbs.
Right, exactly, exactly. I mean, everything about yeah. Actually, that's a good point, because she was very much a Tubbs female leading interest than she
Right.
was a
Sonny
Crockett.
Crockett, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and the hair thing is almost exactly what you would get out of a Miami Vice episode, where it's like she had the hair one way for the entire episode, and then I guess again, if she's Tubbs, she wouldn't be on the yacht at the end of the episode with Crockett. She would be. I guess I don't know where Tubbs would hang out. He would just have his double-breasted suits and be somewhere. Yeah, but she would have the different hair, and they would end the episode there probably.
Yeah, and of course Toto needs to collect. He was owed $5.
Yes.
And he doesn't get $5, at least not on camera, but he does get a wonderful gift of a Swiss Army knife.
Yes.
And it seems like that may have been the first gift Toto ever received. So
Yeah.
it really meant a lot to him.
Yeah, it was like, is really, I can keep this? Like, I can have this? And it's like, yeah, yeah, and I guess it was worth more than $5.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, the usage that he could get out of it. I mean, I imagine someone like a Toto, he would know a lot of things. He would use that a lot. He'd probably be,
Yeah, Toto was kind of like a human Swiss Army knife. It had many functions and could help you out in any situation you were in.
Right, exactly. And again with Toto, again, and going back to how this movie seemed to make every decision correctly, right? I mean, the only decision probably was the baddie, and even then, the movie was so good that it didn't matter that
Right.
we had a low rent Richard Lynch, who had, like you said, wrote himself into the movie as the baddie. But how many times do you get like this sort of jack of all trades, sea urchin, or like street urchin kid who does everything, who's just like annoying, and he's like always there bothering the hero, screaming, maybe speaking in a high-pitched voice all the time. This movie gave us a smattering of Toto, that he was just there enough to get us from plot point to plot point.
Right.
Even in the chase scene, he's really not like causing issues or screaming at Dudikoff or any of that stuff, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah. Yeah. When you put the kids in, it could destroy a really great movie. And yeah, just like you said, they had just enough Toto
Exactly, yeah.
to make
And
this work.
I like the Better Off Dead vibe to it, kind of, where it's like, where's my $2, and he's like, yeah, where's my $5, and yeah, hey, Dudikoff.
Remember, you said,
Right.
I owe you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Dudikoff, to his credit, he could have said, "Hey, we didn't get anything in writing." I don't remember. I don't know what you're talking about. There was explosions going on around us. We had just seen a car crash through some barrels and blow up. I think maybe you had a knock to the head and thought that I said I was giving you $5. But
or just say, "Oh, go see Wild Bill. He's in charge of accounts receivable this week."
Exactly. That'd be great. Yeah. Put in a request with Wild Bill. Of course, as Steve James says, the red tape that would be involved with poor Toto getting that $5. So, at least, Dudikoff, he was a man of his word, and he gave him the Swiss Army knife. But also Steve James leaves his woman behind. So the woman that he met at the governor's party, she's there at the end celebration. And but unlike Dudikoff, who was able to take Alicia with him, Steve James.
She must not have want to leave, I guess, or he didn't want to take her.
Right.
He's not a one-woman man.
Exactly. Yes. Well, because he goes, I'll write you, and she's like, no, you won't. Okay, I'll call you. No, you won't. All right. Well, maybe I'll see you around sometime. Okay, I'll take that. That's enough.
To get what you can take from Curtis Jackson, I guess.
Yeah, and that's it. They get on the plane, and there's a little bit of a Wizard of Oz kind of thing, right? With everybody at the party waving bye to them, right? It's almost like like a dude comes like, I don't know how this thing works, or whatever. Yeah. But that's kind of.
He tapped his shoes together and they were gone.
Right, exactly. And then one of the things I would say about the credit sequence here is that, we're so used to these Marvel movies, right, where we get these stingers at the end, or these like sort of post-credit sequence. This movie has the best post-credits image ever, and that is the Canon logo with American Ninja 2, the Confrontation, it written on it there. That's what I like. I would sit through the theater just to be able to say that I saw that at the end there. I think it would be worth it.
Yeah, there's so many of these canon movies that I wish I would have seen in the theater. But taking me to R-rated movies was not usually a thing that my parents did. The only canon movie I saw in the theater was Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Oh, nice. I think the only one I saw was the Masters of the Universe.
I'm surprised I didn't. 4. Yeah, I love Superman. I mean, the original Superman is neck and neck with Death Wish 3 as my favorite movie of all time. And obviously Superman came first, and so it has a lot longer history with me. But yeah, I think 3 kind of like was like, and then I'm like 4, and yeah, I almost think it was like I was getting to that point where it's like too cool for that. Like
exactly, yes.
No way, I'm not gonna watch Superman. So let's no.
Yeah, I don't remember,
I wish I could go back and do it.
Yeah, exactly. I think I saw 4. I don't remember. I definitely Masters of the Universe. I remember like that was in it, and I don't remember being impressed with it at all because I think I was learning at that time, at that age, that the movie versions of things that I liked were never as good as like the cartoon or the comic book or the video game or any of those things. It was like my first lesson in that, but it was a lesson that I was going to learn a lot more, whether it's Double Dragon, Super Mario.
To me, I did not like the Masters of the Universe cartoon that much. I mean, I watched it, but it wasn't. G.I. Joe was my cartoon.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Masters was like, it's all right. But I think I didn't like it because to me it didn't match the toys, because it's like there was no Prince Adam when the toys came out. Right, exactly. I liked He-Man. He was just He-Man, but then it's like, no, he's got a secret identity, like all these freaking superheroes have to have a secret identity. And I was just like, yeah. So I didn't care that the movie, of course I should have seen that in the theater too, but I remember watching, I'm like, okay, that's all right. But now it's like one of my I hope when we're done here, I turn on the TV and there's damn Masters of the Universe, and that's what I fall asleep to. Right. I have fallen asleep to Masters of the Universe so many times, it's not even funny.
It is. It's because you know what it was. The cartoon, I agree. Because the thing with me about the cartoon, as a kid, even as a kid, I knew it was just a 30-minute advertisement for whatever the new toy was. Right. It was just like, oh, there's like a car thing that smashes, right? That like and it's like, oh, it's going to be in the new, or like there's a ninja master, oh, he's going to be,
Right.
But the thing about the movie that I didn't like is that you had all these characters, like you had the Bee-Man, you had Faker, the blue version of He-Man, all those characters, and they didn't use any of them in the movie.
Right.
And I was disappointed. I was like, where's the Bee-Man? Where's Stinkor? Like where's the
one guy? Character I'm glad didn't make it was that damn Orko.
Yes, yes.
Fuck
Yeah,
Orko. I hate him.
right. Yes.
I much prefer Gwildor.
Yes, I agree with you there. Well, because Wildor didn't fly, so it made it a lot easier, right? They didn't have to
Exactly.
float him around. I remember my parents when they first got a color TV, because we parents didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up, and so I remember as a very young, it was either they first got cable, one of the two, but Orko was different color. I was used to seeing Orko as one color, and suddenly like, and then I went to this Toys R Us and saw that actually that's the color Orko was supposed to be. I don't remember. I think it might have been it was cable, because I think when my dad with the Red Sox and the Bruins, and like they were only on cable in the mid '80s, and I think that's what it was. But part of me feels like they might have had a black and white TV, and then they just got a color TV, and suddenly Orko was like all these different colors that I wasn't used to, and it felt really weird. I was like, is this what when did they change the color on Orko? And I was like, no, they didn't change it. It was just the TV. My parents got a better TV. Yeah.
TVs were expensive back then. It wasn't easy to, you didn't just go out willy-nilly and buy them. Now you could get like a 65-inch TV for $200 and
Right. The problem with that 65-inch TV for $200 is where are you going to put your potted plants?
right, exactly.
Right? Like
I need my classic console TV, you know.
right, exactly. Those old TVs, you could put things on them. You could,
It was
could get
furniture.
yeah, yeah. Pictures of the grandkids, just got that little stand, just let it sit there, and it's, yeah. Yeah, I remember my grandparents had one of those that was like it swiveled. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, and they brought it to Florida with them, and of course it conked out after a certain time. And my grandfather wanted a TV on a stand that swiveled like that, and we couldn't find one like that. And we're like, what if we just put like a tablecloth over the old TV and put one of these flat screens on top of that, and then he can turn that around that way. And I was like, yeah, let's see what he think. And he thought it was the greatest thing ever. He's like, because that was like the thing is he did not want a new TV if he couldn't spin it around, because he would like, he'd sit like the dining room area was like on one part of the living room area, then like
Right.
there's the couch. So he needed to be able to swivel it. And so it was like, yeah, I mean those old TVs, like they just, even when you couldn't watch them anymore, they could still serve a function.
They did, yeah.
Yeah,
They sure did.
unless you were at at a bar, at a dive bar, in a Canon film, and then that if you're using it as a table, someone's gonna get smashed through it. So
And rightfully so.
exactly. Well, as we're wrapping up here, Chris, anything else about American Ninja 2 that you wanted to mention? Anything that we didn't cover?
I think we covered it all. Again, what we started with, is this one better than the first?
Yeah.
Or no? I mean, I think the one thing the first has going for it is Judy Aronson.
Yes. Yeah.
That's definitely the plus on that one. But I'll tell you, this blind beggar bar fight, I could keep going back to it. I mean, there's not any scenes, and I mean, like I've watched the first one many times, but there's not one particular scene where I'm like, oh yeah, we got to watch this scene
right
19 times in a row.
You don't get the unleashed Steve James you get in this one.
Right.
And I think that's why I like this one better than the first one. It is, like you said, it's like a Godfather 2 kind of thing, where it's like, how can you not like the Godfather? But then it's like Godfather 2. It's like, yeah, I mean, Dudikoff and James, it's like, De Niro and Pacino.
Right.
Only they get to be in the same scenes together sometimes.
Right. And I think the other thing is, obviously, any first movie, you kind of got to get all that origin stuff in there.
Yeah.
Which could kind of slow it down a bit. Where here we know the two main characters, and they're going to take on bad guys, and that's what we paid for. That's what we want to see.
I mean, they just dive right in. You're right. It's just like pick them up, at the airport, throw on some Move to the City, some Guns N' Roses, and let's just get into it. And suddenly it's like, yeah, we're wearing body glove wetsuits and we're going to the beach and fighting ninjas.
The only other famous body glove wearer I remember would be Sid. Psycho Sid. He had the elbow pad.
That's right.
Well, I think it was when he was Sid Justice, really.
Yes.
It was the Sid Justice run.
When he was WCW, right?
No, right when he came. When he first came over.
When he first came to WWE.
He was Sid Justice, and then, he didn't make it that long.
Yeah, and he was, Psycho Sid.
Because softball season started, so he had to leave.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That age, that area of wrestling was just that time period. As a kid growing up, watching, kind of through that period, it was just like all of these big blonde, massive guys that they were just getting in the ring and throwing each other around. Somebody was talking about Tugboat the other day, and I was just like, man, one of the best heel turns ever was a Tugboat turning
Oh,
on the Hulkster.
yeah, because Tugboat was kind of a lame character, but Typhoon, now that's something with some. And yeah, Sid, I was convinced Sid was going to be the next Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
I was all like, when he left, like he was one of those guys where I see him in the magazine, I'm like, oh, he's got to come to WWF. He's got to come. He's going to be in the biggest. And he got to WCW. I'm like, well, that's cool. At least I can watch him all the time, and he's awesome here. But then when he left, I'm like, oh, here we go. And I don't think he even made it a year, and he was gone.
Yeah. It's amazing with that time period, because when WCW, when they got the infusion of cash and they kind of poached everybody from WWF, it it was a fascinating time, because then you kind of get, sort of WWF is sort of to transform into that, sort of the with Stone Cold Steve Austin as a sort of an anti-hero and stuff.
Yeah.
But I remember my friends and I, we used to watch TNT Nitro, Monday Night Nitro, and there would always be a great action movie after it, like something like this, Dudikoff film usually, or something like that. But then it was just like we would be watching it, and guys were getting injured, and I just remember it was like, oh, Goldberg's out, we're not going to see, Bret the Hitman Hart is, comes over from, now he's out, and it was like slowly you were watching it on a Monday night, and you're just like, man, even Buff Bagwell's not in here. Like,
Right.
if they can't pull Buff Bagwell, what are we gonna do for, or the disco guy? I can't remember that guy.
Disco Inferno. Yeah.
Right, exactly. It's like when they couldn't get him, that was like, I guess it was only a matter of time. But
It's momentum. I mean, wrestling is always like momentum. Yeah, WCW had the momentum for a while, and when they lost it, they lost it. And meanwhile, on the other channel, they were ramping up, and it was like, no. And that's how it's like. It's been the past couple of years. It's like WWE's just been ramping up, and it's like, wow.
Yeah, because they were talking about that, how, like, I was listening on another podcast where they were talking, because obviously with WrestleMania coming this weekend, which for people listening, WrestleMania will already happened when you're hearing this, but they were talking about how AEW, like how much WWE needs AEW, because it's like without it, they it's easy for them to get complacent, without a competitor there to push them. They're saying how like that's kind of maybe hurting the UFC, that they don't have another mixed martial arts organization that's like close enough to even be seen as a threat in that way. And that's kind of really what's made it like where WWE is kind of making the right decisions kind of constantly, because they don't have any choice. If they mess up, AEW's there to potentially kind of take advantage of it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it definitely is. It's made them rethink things, and yeah, they're rolling now though. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. And like you said, this will drop after, but yeah. I will. One more. I work one more day, and then I have 4-day weekend, because I'm going to need some prep time, and I'm going to need some recovery time, because I'm going to be watching a lot of wrestling over the next couple days. So
I may go down to the sports complex just to see if there's like events going on.
I think they're doing like a kickoff thing, and is there like Pepsi Plaza? I would assume that's like the in between all the stuff.
I think so, and I think like they're doing a Friday Night SmackDown is going to be
SmackDown to be there, and in the Hall of Fame, and then I think it's Wells Fargo is for Monday Night Raw as well. They'll just be there the whole weekend. So
because it's one thing that's great about Philadelphia. Even though the basketball team wants to move to downtown, which I'm not a fan of that, but all 4 of the main sports teams play in one location. So it's like the football stadium, the baseball stadium, and then the arena with the hockey and basketball teams. They're all right in one area. So it like the other night when I went to a basketball game and there was a baseball game at the same time, of course the subway's crowded, but it makes it really nice, because for something like a WWE event, they can sort of stage things in a lot of locations, and it's all in that one area. You just take the subway to that one place, and everything's right there.
Yeah, they know what they're doing. They that's why these places bid, and they probably make sure, like, okay, do you have this, and this? Okay, then we will come to your town.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and Philadelphia definitely. I mean, for me, the worst was when they had the Democratic National Convention, not because of party or anything like that, but because essentially they just took over that whole area for the
Right.
4 days or whatever. And it was like, being on the subway, like you couldn't get to the lowest, to the subway stop where the sports complex was if you didn't have like a badge. So like all the protesters and everybody that were going down there, they would get off at my stop, because my stop is like the one right before. And so it was like anytime I had to go into the city to do, which is, I live in South Florida, I live in the city, but we always call it going into the city when you're going to the downtown. But it was like anytime I was going to do anything, it was just like all kinds of, just crowds of people just everywhere. And I was just like, oh, just get this thing over with. And so,
Right.
yeah. So somebody online talked about how it would be great if we got the Olympics here. And I was like, no, don't ever say that. Don't ever say that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it always sounds good. I mean, like even a couple of years ago here in Cleveland when they did the Winter Soldier, they were shooting some of that here. That's the thing. Like, oh, things should come to Cleveland. Things should come to Cleveland. We should, we want to be a big city too and everything. And it's like then they just bitch because the traffic is all screwed up because
Exactly.
they got to shut down streets because they're blowing up a car on a main road. And it's like, well, you got what you wanted.
Exactly. That's how I feel. 'Cause it's like, being from Maine, right? Where like I think the only movie that was ever even took place near where I grew up was like The Last Detail, the Jack
Jack
Nicholson movie.
Nicholson, right?
Yeah, I think that's the only thing that's ever even took place where I grew up. But they moved to Philadelphia, where they shoot movies like Creed and like the Shazam movie, stuff like that. And it's like I'm watching Shazam, and I'm like, oh, look at that's the 9 bus. I've taken the 9 bus before. And look at I've taken over that overpass where he just shot, and it's falling off the overpass, and he's catching it. It's like, oh, that's so cool. There's a 9 bus. And then it's like I'm watching the news, and they say, yeah, Adam Sandler's shooting a movie, and so Market Street's going to be shut down while he's shooting a movie. And I'm like, get out of here. I don't want to, it's like, go shoot your movie someplace else. So it's like it's already old for me now. It's like
Right.
I'm already done with it. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I totally get that, unfortunately. Yeah, it's yeah, one of those things when you're in the city, right? Like you kind of, it's like the idea of it's really cool, and then or it's cool to see it after the fact, right? And be like, I
Right.
recognize all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but getting through it, it's like I don't, I don't want you shutting down my streets and having to film it. Well, Gecko, Chris, as we're wrapping up here, anything that you wanted to plug for us?
Well, of course, I encourage everyone check out bulletproofaction.com. We got stuff up there all the time, new stuff, old stuff, and if you like this pod, you can check out my podcast, the Bulletproof Podcast. Go figure, and you'll find it where you found this podcast, you'll find my podcast.
Yeah, and of course I'll have the links in the podcast description. But you guys covered the first American Ninja, I believe.
I believe so. Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I think so on an episode. So if anyone's curious and you want to just think look that one up as well. And of course I will tell people, like I said, I'm waiting till I see the new Roadhouse before I listen to your episode on the new Roadhouse. But the first Roadhouse, the original Roadhouse, that episode was a lot of fun. And so it's it's one of those movies that like when people are talking about it, there's a part where you're like, oh, I want to talk about that too. I want to, like you almost want to speak through the headphones or whatever you're listening. But I the way you guys covered it was great. It's just it was it put it in its proper context, which I think is important.
And yeah, I like a lot of them because Ryan, he's younger than me, which isn't hard to do. It seems, but yeah, he hasn't seen a lot of these, so it's like you got my old veteran eyes who've seen these movies many times, and like, what is your first impression? Like I, sometimes jealous, like, oh my God, what is your first like? This is the first time you're seeing this movie, so yeah. I like to expand his horizons there with the classics. So,
right. Well, because with Roadhouse, it's interesting because with him being younger, right, he wouldn't have been up at midnight when this would be on TBS.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's funny because like I was listening to Exploding Helicopters podcast where they were talking about When Eagles Dare, or Where Eagles Dare, and Nick Rehak was his his guest on that one, hadn't seen it before. And it's like I think about growing up where it's like that and Kelly's Heroes and Guns of the Navarone would be on TV all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like you fast forward to TBS movies for guys who like movies, or TNT new classics, where it was all those kind of movies were just pulled apart, and it's like we're just going to put them on Turner Classic Movies when we're not showing a Bogart movie or Citizen Kane or something like that, or a musical. So it's like they're almost never on. And so if you're younger, you wouldn't know of those movies. Whereas like for me growing up, it's like if you think of like Pulp Fiction, right? When Samuel L. Jackson says Guns of the Navarone, it's like I know exactly what he's talking about there. Or if MST3K makes a joke about When Eagles Dare, it's like okay, yeah, I just Yeah, it's interesting how, especially how things change so quickly between, cable and VHS, where like, you know, things that you were used to seeing on TV all the time, if you're just a little bit younger, you don't have quite the same experience.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm thinking. Like, when I was young, we didn't even have cable at first. So it's like you had your 5, 6 stations. So it's like if they were showing a movie, it's like, well, you might just end up watching it because you didn't have any other options. So
Right, right. Yeah, I remember my parents only got cable because the sports channels were on. And so that was like a new thing in the 80s, was that sport, like baseball would be on, and it wasn't even on cable all the time, right? It was like on cable and bright. It was like one of those kind of deals. But it was like my dad was like, no, I need to see my Red Sox. I need to see the Bruins, and so they ponied up for cable, and so it was like it was a big. But then of course I had a friend who had a descrambler box, who had, you have to go to the traffic circle and like buy a descrambler so you get all the channels. That's how we saw the Mike Tyson fight when he first got out of prison. The 2-second fight, it was like beautiful that we didn't have to pay for that, that they
right,
were like,
exactly.
but you're right, like it was like, like TV was so different at that time, and suddenly when cable kind of takes over, it's like, especially once they got some money behind cable and they started buying up all these things, yeah, it really changed a lot of, like, it used to be like HBO was the only place you saw new movies, and then like broadcast TV would have them like, I don't know, like 6 months after. It was like,
Right.
but you could still see it on broad. Like I think of like Running Scared or something like that I would have seen on, on broadcast.
Yeah, the ABC Sunday night movie.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and
yeah,
it's like, yeah, like now, like, like USA Network. So many movies you see on USA Network. Like we were talking about, like, you know, was Second in Command? Is that
yeah.
the
The
Van
Van
Damme one?
Damme.
Yeah, like you used to see that stuff on USA.
It was
Now
like a
you
random Saturday night. I think I was like, I didn't have a show. It was when I was
right.
down in Cincinnati. We didn't have any shows that weekend, and I'm just like, probably was winter, and I didn't want to leave, and I was just like, what the like, what is this Van Damme movie? I've never heard of it, and it's like,
Right.
I watched a little bit of it, and I don't think I made it all the way through, or I caught it halfway and saw it to the end. But it's one I do need to. I'm sure. I don't know if I'm missing much, but I'll get to it eventually.
Yeah, yeah. I think like Out for a Kill was one that I saw on USA, where that's the one where he throws the samurai sword, I think, or Seagal throws the samurai sword from the second story window and decapitates a guy at the end. I saw it, like that. I saw that scene, and then the credits rolled on USA, and I was like, how do I find this movie? And I think I went through Netflix and just like rented, like just borrowed like every Seagal movie until I finally. I think I went through like 5 movies before I found it, because there was no way to know, right? Unless I
Right.
grab the TV guide, and if I didn't have a TV guide handy, it was like, well, the guide bar on cable at that time would have already moved on to the next show.
Right.
So he had no way of knowing. But now USA Network, it's like Law and Order reruns and Fast and Furious movies. Like
Yeah.
they're not
Yeah.
showing those kind of movies anymore.
No.
Yeah. So
Sad.
yeah. So if you're younger and you're listening to this, unfortunately you can't see. There was a time when we used to watch this stuff on TV a lot more, and now luckily
Right.
we've
And
got
and you would
streaming.
just stumble upon. So yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, so yeah, streaming. So unless you're really curious to check
Mhm.
things out, you may never see any of this stuff.
Yeah. Well, because also too, right, the name piece of it, right? Like seeing somebody's face on the tin, it was like when you were flipping through the channels, you kind of stopped on the
Right.
next thing, right? And so I guess like the digital guide bar was like the first step of that, right? Because the digital guide bar, you'd see a name and you'd say, "Oh, I kind of know that name. Let me watch this movie and see." Or you'd see the description in the guide bar and say, like, "Okay, that sounds pretty good. I'll check that out." So that was like kind of the first wave of not being able to stumble upon things quite as much.
Right.
Yeah, and then, yeah, now we're at the point now where it's like, yeah, if you see Bruce Willis's face on the tin, you think, okay, well, I like Bruce Willis, I'll see this, and then you realize he's only in the movie for 5 minutes, and right, you've been stuck with Jesse Metcalf the whole time, or or somebody like that. Yeah, so we're a very different age now for younger people, but it is kind of cool, like you said, when you have somebody younger on your show who, like, they're experiencing Roadhouse for the first time, and they weren't up at midnight like I was at 2 in the morning seeing it for like the 30th time,
Right.
drunk and trying to get the room to stop spinning and just hoping I don't get sick. Like, why did I get that extra pint of Guinness, or why did I let the bump into that person from high school who bought me a shot? It's like I paying for this right now, but it's like a whole different experience. You know, they didn't get any of that, and so now they're kind of seeing it with fresh eyes, and you know, picking out things that you know that we took for granted, that we just thought worked. Like, you know, again, but wouldn't have thought there was anything wrong with Patrick Swayze throwing a homeless guy his car keys. You know, like that just made him cool, right? That he would do
Right.
something like that. Yeah. So I mean, that happened in '80s movies a lot, though, when you think about it, right? Like people were throwing. I mean, didn't ZZ Top throw a guy keys, and
Yeah,
right, and he was
so, yeah.
transformed into like Cab Calloway or something like that, and something like that. So I guess that was a common thing. You know, we took for granted there were no such thing as pink slips in '80s movies. So now we're like, well, yeah, I guess this is as good a place to leave it now, you know. But thank you, Chris, for coming out. This was a really fun I mean, this movie's one of the best. So it was a really fun conversation to be able to go through this one.
Yeah. You know, any excuse to rewatch, and I love talking about it. And I appreciate you inviting me on.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll be back soon. Bye, everyone. All right.